Are we ready? Hello.
Yep.
Hello, I am Cara Jean. I'm going to start us off today. I'm an executive coach, speaker, and curator of the Cara method. I work with leaders who are ready to ditch the hustle cult and step into clear, aligned impact. My tools are neurospicy, practical, and human. For me, leadership is about building ecosystems where people actually thrive, and empathy is the fuel that makes that possible. Please feel free to post into the chat where you are coming from so we can see where everyone is joining from. I'm coming in from Lost Valley Education Center and Eco Village in Dexter, Oregon. And let's get started. Please note that we are recording this summit for educational and promotional purposes, and the video recording will be posted to social media. The feedback form is also in the chat. Please submit a feedback form so that we can not only have your email and stay in touch, but hear your comments and feedback. Permission to take care of your needs throughout this day, whether that is a bio break or taking care of fur babies or kids. And on behalf of the Empathy Center, I would like to welcome you to this Empathy Summit on the topic of how we might build an empathy movement. The Empathy Center's mission is to build an empathy movement and to raise the level of mutual empathy in the world through education and community initiatives. The Empathy Center and the empathy community would like to extend our deepest of gratitudes to our generous sponsors and partners. You can see more about us in the link in the chat, and we invite your organization to be a partner and a sponsor. You can also see a list of all of our partners on our website. We also want to thank our volunteers, our generous and terrific volunteers who have given freely of their time to make these summits possible as a free event. If you want to help build the empathy movement, you can join the Empathy Summit production team. We meet every Friday. A little bit about this summit. The Empathy Center's mission is to build the empathy movement and raise levels of mutual empathy in the world through education and community initiatives. The summit launches an ongoing series focused on the collaborative building of the empathy movement. I touched my screen and now all of my words have disappeared. Okay, we're back. Thank you for your patience. We aim to co-create a meaningful experience and share its outcomes. So let's start by co-creating an empathy summit together. And when it's all over, please share the fruits, all that you harvest from it, as widely as possible. Thank you all so much for being here. It is now my pleasure to introduce Dr. Stuart Nolan, as he is an empathy trainer, keynote speaker, stage performer, and author of How to Train an Empath, Lessons from a Professional Mind Reader. With a PhD in cultural history and theatrical and scientific mind reading, and over 35 years of experience unlocking empathy through science, performance, and play. Dr. Nolan will be speaking on building cultures of empathy, practice, research, and innovation in the UK. Take it away, Dr. Nolan.
Hello, everybody. Give me a nod if you can see my slides. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to be focusing on fairly recent work done with organizations. So I'm going to be talking about empathy in the workplace and focusing on two different challenges that we have in the UK here. One is an understanding of empathy issue, and the other is more about data and proof. It's really a talk of two different halves that are quite different. So I want to begin by reading you the short introduction to my book. This introduction is called Catch a Smile. So play along with me if you can. Before diving into the pages ahead, take a quiet moment to try something simple but powerful. Close your eyes and bring to mind someone you love. Picture their face as vividly as you can. Now imagine that their face breaks into a smile. A real, joyful, unexpected smile. What happens as you picture this? Notice what thoughts rise in your mind. Notice what emotions you feel. Notice what happens to your own face. This tiny moment contains all three kinds of empathy. You think about what they are feeling. You share the emotion they feel. And most importantly for this book, you smile. Your body shares their smile. This book is about that third kind of physical empathy, the kind that moves through bodies before it is ever explained in words. Thank you for joining in. I saw some really lovely smiles happen then when you were thinking about those loved ones. Thank you. So this is the ideomotor response, the body responding to thought in ways that are interesting, unusual, and sometimes astonishing. This is a group at the Library of Congress where I did my Kluge Fellowship. Eyes closed, imagining the future. Their bodies tilt forwards. When they shift to imagining their past, their bodies tilt backwards. It's how all of our physical empathy workshops begin. We then build, step by step, teaching how the ideomotor response underpins empathy in the body. Through physical contact, participants learn to sense those responses in others and read intention, emotion, and even thoughts. They find objects somebody has hidden simply by holding their hand. They duplicate unseen drawings, again, by holding the hand of the person who did the drawing. They're continuously amazed. It feels like rediscovering something we can all do, but have somehow forgotten. Imagination and physical reality are not always as separate as we might assume. These physical empathy exercises have been at the heart of my practice for the last 25 years. 8 UK university collaborations, 2,500 people trained across 14 sectors. 3 to 6 times return on investment on average with participating organizations. Here is someone duplicating another person's unseen drawing simply by holding their wrist while they think about the shape they drew. Here is the original drawing, and next to it, the duplicate made in this exercise. The drawings aren't always duplicated as accurately as this, and it kind of doesn't matter how accurate they get. The point is that they are feeling and managing to draw a drawing that they haven't seen through reading those ideomotor responses. Here are some figures from an independent evaluation of a leadership program for the NHS that I was involved in. The headline: significant, immediate, and lasting. 4.2 times uplift in empathy confidence, 22% reduction in patient complaints at a 2-year follow-up, 45% improvement in care coordination, measurably reduced sickness absence, staff retention improved within 2 cohorts. So here is the model that we work with. 3 dimensions to empathy. Head: cognitive empathy, perspective taking, active listening, theory of mind. Foundational, necessary, widely taught in the UK. We should keep doing it, but it isn't sufficient. It doesn't stick. Heart: emotional empathy, feeling what another person feels. This is where genuine trust lives. And it is systematically avoided in professional contexts in the UK because it is seen as too messy. That avoidance is a problem that we're trying to address here. Hands, physical empathy, somatic attunement, body-to-body sensing, micro-movement reading, the ability to receive information about another person's emotional state that never becomes words. This is what somebody falls back on 2 weeks after they've been through training in cognitive empathy and trouble happens at work. They don't think in their minds, oh, what was that thing I learned 2 weeks ago? They respond physically. They respond with habit. And the only way to make these things stick is to build that habit in. The smile you felt earlier, your face didn't wait for permission. The tilt in the body, that didn't consult a theoretical framework. These are biological capacities and they are trainable. We have a three-dimensional model. As a field in the UK, we are consistently training one dimension and only occasionally two. So some more quick case studies. The outcomes of the physical empathy work holds across sectors, especially when combined with other hands-on strategy tools, such as Lego Serious Play. A technology company, 54% reduction in resolution time. A logistics company, 43% fewer late handovers in a quarter. A creative company, 38% more viable ideas per section. A government organisation, Nesta, 87% staff engagement during a restructure. Sport, a Premier League rugby team, 25% improvement in teamwork on the field of play. As a Welshman, rugby is very important to me. In finance, payment processing time down by 2 weeks. 6 sectors, 6 smart outcomes. Train all 3 dimensions of empathy. People work better together and you can measure it. So we work through this awareness ladder. Why isn't the things I've talked about already standard practice? The awareness ladder describes where organizations sit in the UK. At the bottom, entirely unaware of what empathy is, unable to even define the word. At the top, ready to engage. And all those levels you have to go through before somebody will even think of booking an empathy trainer.
1 minute.
Oh, so this diagnostic tool we built to kind of move people through that.
Just to be sure, we have 6 minutes because it's still you have 6 minutes.
I have 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, in that case, I'll go back and ease off.
I apologize.
Yes, so we have only 10% of UK employees actively engaged in their work. An estimate of 340 billion lost annually to disengagement. Only 82% of managers are appointed with nothing even related to empathy training in their training. And there are barriers before people will even begin to get on this ladder. Yeah? We have all this active resistance to the whole idea of empathy. I wrote a LinkedIn post this week to promote this that I called, "Does the word empathy give you the ick?" Yeah? We have this problem and we're trying to address it in different ways. So one approach is to make this AI-based tool. So this is at stuartnolan.com/oed.html. I've trained this AI up on the threefold model and the way my organization works, past case studies, and it will take you slowly through a kind of a diagnostic. No replacement for a human, of course, but it captures a bunch of stuff before people have to take that step to actually talk to me, which for a lot of people is difficult. So please try that out. Hopefully, if lots of people use it, it'll also become a source of evidence, because evidence is the infrastructure of a movement, after all. So 2 questions that we have in the UK today that I flagged up at the start. What would our field look like if physical empathy got the same attention as cognitive empathy? both in academia and out in the field. And how do we build the evidence base for empathy? There is increasing good, strong evidence out there, but we need more. And we especially need more for SMEs. The most we have tends to come from large organizations. So we need more of this and to be less siloed and using it more. So thank you. The hard evidence-based work of making organizations more human matters more than we sometimes let ourselves believe in the UK. But this is the line I end my book with because I believe it. People are bloody lovely. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I apologize. I pushed the time early.
And
That
if you want to
was
stop the share,
amazing.
if you'd stop the
Yeah,
share
well,
too. Okay.
that was quite exciting when I was like, oh, I got an adrenaline rush like I was on a fairground ride.
I hope it was enjoyable and not stressful.
No, I like those things.
I loved this. Instantly smiled in that practice. I will be using it before meditations and journaling to put me in the right state of mind. And I loved that head, heart, and hands that makes it so visceral, dimensional, and then you took it to measurable and trackable. My BS, my belief system aligns beautifully with that. Is those metrics are what are going to allow us to take us from that empathy ick into that empathy evidence. And on a personal note, I would love to talk to you later because my eco village would love to support this.
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nolan. It is now my pleasure to bring up Paramita Roy. She is an educator, filmmaker, and founder of Global Empathy Conferences and Virtual School in Australia. VSA, Virtual School Australia, is internationally recognized for teaching empathy through action. Paramita integrates performing arts, storytelling, filmmaking, and reflective writing into education to help young people engage with real-world social issues. She is currently organizing the 8th Global Empathy Conference and will be speaking to us today from understanding to action, why the empathy movement must prioritize action-oriented pedagogies.
Pedagogies.
Easy for you to say. Take it away, Paramita.
Oh, thank you so much. But thanks, Cara, right? Cara, for such a kind introduction. Yeah, pedagogies, that is the method of teaching, what we usually use in our education. I don't know why I'm not able to share my, I'm having some difficulties this morning sharing the, I'll try just last one more time and then I'll move on because I understand we have limited time here.
You have co-hosts, you should be able to screen share. Go ahead.
Okay, yes, I have been able to. Can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Before I begin, I would like to say thank you, Dr. Stuart Nolan, for sharing such an engaging and thought-provoking, range of activities. I really appreciated the practical ideas that you shared and the way you made them so accessible and meaningful. I would love to share those with my students at the Virtual School Australia. And I'm very much looking forward to your book as well, as Cara just said. I'm Paramita and I'm joining you from Adelaide, Australia. It's 2:50 a.m. in the morning. And our topic today is, my topic at least, from understanding to action. As Dr. Nolan also talked about physical empathy, evidence-based practice. So that is the main focus. We call it why the empathy movement must prioritize action-oriented pedagogies. In 2025, at the 7th Global Empathy Conference, a powerful question was raised by Jenna and Edwin from the Empathy Center. How do we grow the empathy movement to reach 1 million people and sustain it as a truly global force? Because in a world marked by fragmentation, inequality, and conflicts, understanding empathy is no longer enough. We must move from understanding to action. Let me start with an example. You're on your phone, like we always are. You're scrolling, a headline flashes, war, loss, destruction, a cry for help. You pause for a second, and then you keep scrolling. Not because you're cruel, not because you don't care, but because somewhere along the way we have learned how not to. We're just not to feel much. And I realized something uncomfortable. It wasn't just the world that had changed. We had changed. There was a time when a single story would stay and move us deeply all day, thinking about the people, imagining their life, feel their pain. But now we move on in seconds. Not because we didn't care, but because caring felt overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And I started to wonder, have we protected ourselves so well that we have disconnected from each other? Thousands of years ago, the Greek poet Homer wrote that the human heart must learn to glow for others' good and melt at others' woe. That was the ideal of being human. Centuries later, the Italian poet Dante Alighieri imagined something darker, a world where people lose that capacity, where they move through life without moral feeling, a kind of living death. And I sometimes wonder, are we closer to that world than we think? Because today, empathy feels fragile. We are more connected than ever, and yet somehow more emotionally distant. And maybe that's not surprising. We are living in an era of constant stimulation, rising conflict, and deepening polarization. We are always connected, and yet rarely present. And over time, something begins to erode our emotional well-being, our sense of connection, our ability to truly listen in a world like this. Empathy is no longer optional. It is essential. Not because it makes us nice, but because it allows us to live together. Empathy doesn't require agreement, but it demands understanding. And in that space, we respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Here's the paradox. Even primates, even rats, respond to the suffering of others. So the question isn't, can humans feel empathy? The question is, why are we forgetting how? At the Global Empathy Conference in 2025, the question that emerged and discussed by Edwin and Jenna and others from the Empathy Center, how can we expand empathy beyond an idea and turn it into a movement? My answer is simple. As an educator, I believe we have misunderstood how to teach it. Empathy comes from the German word Anfunlung. I hope I've pronounced it correctly, but mainly it means feeling into. For a long time, we have interpreted that as sharing in someone else's emotions. But there is a limitation in that view. Feeling by itself isn't enough. When empathy only becomes meaningful when it evolves from feeling into action. What Dr. Nolan just said talked about physical empathy. Let me share what that looks like. In an elementary school classroom in Canberra, 10-year-old students learned about an earthquake in a distant land. They heard about the loss, the displacement, the suffering, and something happened. They didn't just listen, they cared. And then, without being told what to do, they acted. They organized a school-wide fundraiser, collected second-hand goods, engaged their families, and together they raised money to support people they would never meet. 10-year-olds. Not because they were extraordinary, but because they were given the opportunity to respond. And that changes the question for us. It's not, can young people be empathetic? It's, are we giving them opportunities to act on that empathy? So let me tell you another story, not from theory, but from practice. A classroom that doesn't look like a traditional classroom. Virtual School Australia, imagine this. Students in Australia working with students in exile and war-affected countries. Different worlds, different realities. Some live with stability, others with uncertainties, and sometimes, most of the times, in fear. Now imagine those students creating something together. Imagine being a student who cannot safely tell their story, and then through a digital space, they meet someone who says, your story matters. Let's tell it together. Imagine writing those real-life stories, rehearsing them, hearing them spoken on a stage, and for the first time, their experience is not hidden. It is seen, it is heard, it is honored. At Virtual School Australia, students don't just learn empathy, they practice it through art exhibitions, through theatre, through storytelling, through global collaboration, at festivals like the Adelaide Fringe, Edinburgh Fringe, and sometimes remarkable happens. They listen, they don't just understand each other, they act. Because when you stand on a stage and share these stories, you cannot remain distant. When you create together, you cannot remain indifferent. And when audiences witness those stories, they don't just learn, they feel. Dr. Helen Reeves, in her book, The Empathy Effect, reminds us when art is at its best, there is nothing more powerful to move society toward a more empathetic stance. And we see this happen in theaters, in exhibitions, across global communities. Empathy spreads not as information, but as experience. Through fringe plays, VSS students shared their stories in Australia, in Scotland, virtually with audiences from around the globe. Another example of action-oriented pedagogies I would like to share here. During the COVID-19 pandemic, in one of the Australian schools, a chemistry teacher did something very special. Her students learned how to make hand sanitizer, and then they gave it to people who needed it. It wasn't just learning, it wasn't just chemical reaction, chemical composition, it was learning with purpose. And when students see that their actions matter, education transforms. It becomes meaningful, it becomes human, and here's something we often forget. Empathy is just not taught, it is modeled. Children are always watching. They're watching their teachers, they're watching adults around them, they're watching their parents. They watch how we respond to others, how we handle differences, how we show care. And in those everyday moments, they learn what it means to be human. And there's one more thing. Empathy in action doesn't just help others, it transforms the person who gives. It creates connections. It restores purpose. It builds hope. Now, is this empirical research complete? No, this work is still emerging, but the early signals are clear. When empathy is lived, not just taught, it becomes stronger, more real, more lasting, more likely to lead to action. So maybe the problem isn't that we don't care. Maybe the problem is we haven't been given enough ways to practice caring. So let me leave you with this. If even the smallest creatures can respond to the suffering of others, then empathy is not something we have lost. It's something we have stopped exercising. And like any human capacity, if we don't use it, it fades. But if we practice it, it grows. So if we truly want to rebuild empathy in this world, we must stop asking people simply to feel more and start creating spaces where they can create, collaborate, and act. Because empathy doesn't grow when we watch. It grows when we step into each other's stories and choose to act. And perhaps the future of humanity will not be defined by how much we know, but by how deeply we are willing to feel and how courageously we choose to act on that feeling. And that is why the empathy movement must prioritize action-oriented pedagogies. Thank you.
Oh, that was amazing. Action-oriented pedagogies. Action-oriented education. Y'all, I got it. You so proud of me? I'm proud of me.
Can we
I
stop the
Googled
screen
that.
share? Just a quick.
Yeah.
Oh, I love asking, are we protected or disconnected? I am going to sit with that for quite some time, I think, today. And saying empathy doesn't require agreement. It demands understanding. Mwah.
Thank you,
Are
Cara.
we giving our children access to activities to practice that empathy where they are seen, where they're heard, where they're honored? Together, you're providing not only online but in-person access to bridge all of those gaps, not just learning but feeling. And 100% agree, when action matters, education transforms. The children are watching. And empathy lived is empathy empowered. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cara.
Oh, this is so good. I am delighted to bring up Martin Golder, a retired mediator and architect who just finished the book Journey to Empathy, about his personal discovery of the power of empathy. How he will be speaking to us today on how to convince the gangster class to join the empathy movement. Oh, I'm listening. All ears. Go. Tell me things.
Thank you, Cara. Thank you. And thank you, Edwin and the Empathy Center. I'm so happy to be part of this great series that is run several times a year. At 80, I decided to write down what I have learned about life and empathy. It was a journey, still incomplete, to travel from having my empathy removed at an early age by British boarding school to learning all about it again. Back in 2014, Edwin and I briefly traveled the path together at Compassion Week at Stanford. Look, here, this is the book. This is the book, Journey to Empathy. You can get it by email me or DM me. It's also available on Amazon, but I print them here and bind them in the basement and send them out from here too. And my first adventure into AI was to feed the whole book into Notebook LM, Google's large language model, And in a few seconds, it read the book and encapsulated what it is about. Here's what it said. This document presents a personal narrative exploring the author's journey to understanding and applying empathy, particularly in the context of mediation and conflict resolution. The author, an architect who became a mediator, initially used mechanical empathy, performing empathetic actions without genuine feeling, but later developed true empathy through meditation, self-reflection, and diverse life experiences, including extensive travel and interactions across various cultures. The text also touches upon the evolution of empathy as a concept and a skill, referencing academic research on brain plasticity and the benefits of empathy in business and society. Ultimately, the author emphasizes the transformative power of genuine empathy, listening, and kindness in navigating personal relationships, societal conflicts, and global challenges like climate change, advocating for its conscious cultivation for a better world. Wow. I mean, I was blown away. This is like 5 seconds, you know. And to my mind, it nailed it, you know. I have since learned that much AI is fairly sycophantic. So realized that this report might be more perceived as my objective than my achievement. However, I was encouraged enough by this evaluation from a neutral reader with all the accumulated knowledge of humanity that I included it on the back cover. The important thing to me was that it had recognized what I was trying to say in a jumble of words, loosely strung together as some kind of record of my life and journey. The journey was discovering empathy as the primary tool of mediation and developing a successful tool that 1 year led to a 100% settlement rate. I wrote it up and presented it at various conferences and created a course to teach it to other mediators and lawyers. It did, however, involve some Metta meditation, which seemed to limit its appeal to lawyers for some reason. Recently, I was on a podcast in Austria, and when it came out, I was a little shocked to find that it was titled Gangster Empathy. You can Google it and listen to it, but I get it. The subtitle of the book is Stories for Mediators, Lawyers, Con Men, Sociopaths, and Other Humans. Mechanical Empathy was the working title for the book. And that came from my mentor, who noticed that I was really not feeling very much. I'd be in mediations and I'd be thinking, get a life, buddy, stop whining. And I'd be saying, that must have been very difficult for you to go through. You know, complete disconnect between my inner and outer worlds at the time. So she called it Mechanical Empathy and said I should write a book. That was 20 years ago. So it was the working title for the book. And as we know, it's the tool of every con man. Know your mark. You know, Hollywood is full of dark films where evil force masquerades as a saint. So Mechanical Empathy still might be a better title, but I changed it back to Journey to Empathy, which was the name of the course that I taught. So here we are with the gangster class taking over the reins of power, you know, Lower East Side in days of yore. To get yourself in the mindset, I find it helpful to talk like an old New York gangster, you know, just an honest 10%, you know. Louie, what you doing to me? We're going to have to rub you out if you don't get into line, you know. So anyway, I thought I just might throw it out here. How can the gangsters use the best tool in the universe to achieve their dastardly goals rather than crude devices like guns? The Godfather image rather than the enforcer, you know. So at Compassion Week, the one that Edwin and I were out, several CEOs talked of how they had agreed to compassion or empathy workshops for staff as morale builders. They were not expensive and staff seemed to appreciate them. Then a year later, the staff are happier, the customers are happier, and profits have risen. What's not to like? You know, bring on the empathy, bring on the compassion. And as we know, sociopaths can sometimes be fairly successful on the CEO track. Or as Anita Nowak says in Purposeful Empathy, CEO equals chief empathy officers. So perhaps this is an example of taking empathy to the sociopathic crowd. As con men, they see the results, so it becomes their way of being. From the Marx point of view, perhaps it is better to be robbed by an empathetic con man rather than just being shot and robbed. Moving into the psychopathic world of real gangsters, like many powerful leaders around the world today, how can empathy be used as a weapon to wield against these forces? This is perhaps a question to which I do not have any immediate answer. However, I do believe that the empathy movement and the empathy center will soon be at the forefront. It is not the only way, but it is the best. From the American perspective, which is traditionally really the gangster perspective from the West of the world's viewpoint, this smacks of socialism. You know, the current economic systems based on fossil fuel have brought us to this point. And in America, money is primary. The cries for capitalism to pass into history are well-founded and increasingly loud. But this is America. This is sacrilege. Some cries, perhaps just for an end to the laissez-faire, you know, keep the baby, you know, throw out the bathwater. Have a new Bretton Woods. So remember the shift. I mean, the shift, we hear a lot about the shift. This is definitely part of that, and it's a big part. The only way forward for humanity is in a culture based on empathy, love, and compassion. In days gone by, outliers would be exiled, executed, or reformed. In these days, we say there are no outliers. We are all a continuum. So this means that those who are anathema to me are also part of this continuum of humanity and culture and society. But somehow or other, we need to keep going in a way that doesn't kill women and children and men indiscriminately. This is where mediation comes in. Not compromise necessarily, but sometimes. A case of not compromise was described to me by my mentor, Patricia Lane, where a Silicon Valley-style dispute ended in a joint venture. If it had gone to court, that would have been a whole different outcome. I have read this intro piece because I'm old and can be prone to ramble. Again, thank you, Edwin, for your unstoppable dedication to empathy. I say unhesitatingly that empathy circles are an amazing and effective technology and also a way of being. If I haven't used all my time, I encourage any questions. There's no need to feed back to me what I've said. I feel heard just by the honor of being here with you all today. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Martin. That was incredible. I'm still going to repeat back and reflect some of the things I heard. Anyway, empathy from personal to a better world. Yes, please, and thank you. The gangsters using the tools for the universe to meet their ends. Love that. I heard empathy over Uzis. Okay, I'm for that. And America as the global gangster felt very real. And if we can find a way forward that isn't killing women and children, I am very much pro that as a woman who is also a mother. That sounds great. Let's do that, please, and thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming and sharing this with us and for sharing your journey with the world. The more we can do that, the better the world, I believe, is going to be. Oh, this first hour has been incredible. I got a new phrase before everybody got in here, dim blovi. So cheers to that. I got a new word, pedagogy. Oh, I will be using that. That is such a delicious one. And we got empathy inspiration. I am feeling like today is the best day ever already. And I get to lead us through an integration practice. So the purpose of this is to move us from inspired into activated. And we're going to go through 3 stages. The first stage is to anchor within. We're going to do a little grounding so that we can have the felt memory of being heard to internalize the movement and that commitment. And they're going to ripple that outward and creating a relational moment of practicing empathy and listening with another person. And then we're going to commit out loud and make a spoken public declaration to activate and follow through. I hope you are as ready as I am. Shall we? Okay. I want to ask us to do something unusual. I want you to feel something, and not just think about it. Feel it. Think of a moment when someone really heard you. Not when they agreed with you, not when they fixed the problem, not when they waited politely for their turn to talk. When they actually heard you. When you felt in your body, I exist. I matter. What I said landed. Hold that moment. Notice where you feel it. In your chest, maybe? Or your shoulders relaxing? Is there a kind of opening? Is it something else entirely? A feeling is not a memory of something rare. It is evidence of something real. And that is the entire argument for this movement, felt in a matter of seconds. Now notice what that moment made possible. Maybe you were more honest after that, more willing, more open. Maybe the relationship deepened. Maybe the conflict softened. Maybe you felt, for just a minute, the world was a little less lonely than you had thought. That's not a side effect of empathy. That is empathy, doing the work. Here is what I need you to know. That capacity to make someone feel heard, it's not something you have to learn. It's not a technique. It's not a certification. It's not something this summit reminded you. It lives in your body already. It always has. Empathy. Every time you slowed down and actually listened, every time you reflected back on what you heard, every time you chose presence over performance, you are already practicing this. Your nervous system knew exactly what it was doing. It was building trust and safety. It was building the conditions where real things can be said and real people can be seen. This movement doesn't need you to become something new. It needs you to do more intentionally, more often, what you already know how to do. The moment you remembered in wave 1, where you first felt heard, you have given that to someone else more than once, probably without knowing the weight of it. You're not a student of this moment. You're not a student of this movement. You are already one of its practitioners. Every summit, we ask ourselves the same question. Not how do we make empathy feel good? We already know it feels good. But how do we grow this? How does a practice that lives in this room, in these bodies, find its way into the rooms we each go back to? I want to ask you a question directly, and I want a real answer. In the chat, tell me, how will you grow this movement in the world you are returning to after today? Is there a specific person you'll introduce to the empathy movement? A community, team, or space where you can bring this practice? A conversation you've been avoiding where this could change that? A structure, an event you can bring this into? Reflect, read, teach, coach intentionally. In the coaching practice is a beautiful place to bring more empathy. What else? Put it in my chat, my friends. Oh, with our kids, that is one of the best places to practice empathy. They get it faster than we do. More empathy in personal relationships. Yes. Oh, grandparenting, 1010%. Pretty sure grandparenting is the reason we have kids to begin with. It looks fantastic. Teaching to students and trusted colleagues. Oh, ripple impact. I love that. Yes, with the Empathy Center.
Oh, by the way, that was great grandparenting.
Great grandparenting sounds even better. Yeah. Look at what's happening. You're not just building the movement's next chapter, you're committing. It's not a strategy deck. You, in this room, in this moment, are delivering the answers, incorporating more action-oriented empathy into classes, lessons, and training that circle. Yes. Reach out to more people beyond your comfort zone. Oh, powerful stretch. Have plans to collaborate with someone who's producing material for schools based on that work. Yes. Oh, prison ministry, powerful. Mindful world. Yes. Empathy and ethics, combining empathy circles with universal human values and reaching 8 billion people. Let's blanket the world in empathy. I'm in. Get emotional. This is the magic. Every person in this room is now a mode for this network. The movement doesn't live in this summit. It lives in you and who you reach in the world. Thank you for being here. Go on and ripple, my friends. As we switch into this second hour, it is my pleasure to introduce Jana. Jana Weiss is an empathy circle facilitator and trainer. She also is a 16 guidelines facilitator with the Foundation for Developing Compassion and Wisdom. Jana combines empathy circles with those 16 guidelines, which are universal human values. Jana, take it away.
Thank you, Cara. So I can't do what Cara does. She's special. It is really my joy to introduce Edwin Rutsch as our next speaker. And Edwin Rutsch is the founding director of the Empathy Center. He created the Empathy Circles and is the leading organizer in the global empathy movement, creator, longtime advocate of the Empathy Circle practice, a simple yet powerful tool for building understanding and bridging divides. And Edwin will share with us today an invitation to co-create our shared empathy movement training curriculum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jana. And let me do a screen share. Bring up my slides. Oops. There we go. Okay, everybody see that? We good? So, yeah, hello everyone, and thank you for being here. I want to talk today about something that I believe is important for the empathy movement to grow from a collection of just individual efforts into a real social and political and cultural force, and that is the need for an empathy circle movement training curriculum. And if we want to, really make mutual empathy a core personal, social, cultural value, we need more than good intentions. We need an educational infrastructure, I believe. And we need a way for people to learn, deepen, facilitate empathy, and bring empathy into relationships, communities, and public life. And a lot of the posts I saw here on the chat just now were really about that. So today I want to share the vision and invitation for how you can help co-create the public domain empathy movement training curriculum. So why does this matter? And as Paramita mentioned, we just have all these social problems that are going on. There's a deep social and emotional fracture, and things are really coming apart. The pieces of the puzzle are coming apart, kind of using that metaphor. Um, and so we see political polarization. There's war. We have war in Iran and many other places right now. We have fear, loneliness, depression, alienation, general breakdown in trust between people. And people just are having difficulty just learning how to speak to each other and are not truly, really listening to one another as deeply as we could. And when people don't feel heard and seen or understood, fear tends to grow, and divisiveness and all the kind of negative dysfunction, defensiveness, and dehumanization grows. So I believe, as it's been mentioned in this summit so far, that it's really mutual empathy, the capacity to hear and be heard and to understand is the foundation and the core value of how we get out of this mess and really put things back together again in an effective way. And to do that, we need an empathy movement. And that's what we're trying to build here in this summit is a movement to raise the level of empathy, and that mutual empathy is really the core of building trust, care, collaboration, and just a whole series of well-being and constructive human values come out of that. But the question is, how do we build that empathy movement? And that's what this summit series is really about, is how do we go about building that movement? And so what I want to talk about is that, that every movement needs infrastructure and organization, and it's helpful to have a shared language and training and it needs a way for new people to enter, to get involved in this Empathy Summit is a way for people to join the movement. And right now, the empathy movement has a lot of inspiring people, methods, and initiatives that are going on. They're really great. A lot of people are working on that. But if we really want to grow the movement and make it scale, and from a bunch of different being disjointed, people just working on their own projects, I think we need a shared educational foundation that sort of supports the movement as a whole. And if we can sort of have this foundation, I think it'll build, just a better way to pass on practices and develop leaders and bring people on board. And this is why I believe the next step for the movement is to co-create a shared training curriculum. The current problem with trainings is that many of the trainings are proprietary. They're behind the paywall, And that's really understandable because, people have put in years of work in developing their trainings and approaches, and they need an income and a livelihood. So, you got to get paid for that. But from a movement building perspective, I think this creates a problem. And when all these different trainings are sort of isolated from one another, collaboration becomes harder and public access is limited. And to really spread and the practice and empathy practices, I would say, are slowed down. So the movement can't grow as quickly as it possibly could. And so the issue is not the existing trainings are bad, they're really excellent, but the issue is that we don't have a open source, public shared movement curriculum that serves as our common ground. And that's really what I'm, wanting to advocate for. So the opportunity is that we can create that open source public domain empathy movement training curriculum. And by that, I mean a shared curriculum that draws from the best from all the different practices and, that makes that available in a form that can be easily used and adapted. It's like an open source project. And it wouldn't replace the existing trainings or work of all the individual trainers, but just be adding to it and, building, I think, a foundation that others could tap into. And it would also create this educational commons, and I think it would help people learn to enter the field, learn practices and build from there, and would make empathy education more available and wider publicly available. There is someone that is not muted. If you could mute, appreciate that. So a foundation already exists. That's the good news. We already have a strong foundation with the active listening practice. Thank you, Carl Rogers, for having developed that. And we also have the empathy circle practice, which I think is a very powerful practice that builds on that. And we also have a 10-hour empathy circle facilitation training, thanks to Bill Filler, who is here, and to Lou Swire for initiating that. And that gives us a base from which a broader curriculum can grow. And so the task is not to, reinvent everything from scratch. The task is to build what already works, and inviting wider collaboration and broader application. What the curriculum could include, it's just different levels, I think. There's a personal level of, self-empathy, emotional support, healing, and, personal growth. We've got relational aspects of empathy, just how to have healthier friendships, romantic and family relationships. And then group and community, where we bring empathy into, different communities like schools, work, religious institutions, community institutions, and then also societal and cultural, so we can do political healing and bridge, social political divides, and for democratic community building, and also for creativity and innovation, like there's a lot of practices that use empathy as gateway to innovation, creativity, and innovation, like human-centered design. So some possible training modules and topics would be, one is defining empathy, grounding the definition in actual practice of the empathy circle. And I've done a talk on that, and I'm also working on a training module for that, just so that we can have sort of a framework for discussing, what are we really talking about when we talk about empathy. There's a lot of people using the words differently. And then there's advanced skills, deepening empathic listening and speaking more empathically. There's overcoming barriers, modules maybe on blocks to empathy. There's, so many blocks, and, talking about that. And responding to the criticisms of empathy that was brought up in the summit today too. Some of the critics that have been writing books negative about empathy, and needing to address those. And also specialized applications, empathy for conflict resolution. We have Lutz Swire in our team. He's been working on that. And empathic social action, citizens assemblies. These are other empathy is sort of a gateway to these different practices, and self-care practices like focusing, which is a technique that based on empathy for self-empathy, basically. So access and livelihood. So the idea is to have a free entry level for the training. We have that with the empathy circle facilitation training. So we're really trying to lower the barriers to participation, but also these other training modules that are pathways for facilitator development, and also generate an income for trainers, because we really want to create a healthy ecosystem where people can enter the empathy movement, have easy entry, but then learn these skills and can spread the skills more widely. And how do we build that? First, we need to form a curriculum development team. And we have, I put a link in for our sign up page for that. And then I think if we're working in a collaborative effort, it would help us do fundraising too for creating the curriculum. And then we would want to map different empathy, methods and approaches that are out there. And there's many of them, which I'll mention in a few minutes. And then identify the core competencies. What is really the skills and the mindset and that you need to develop that empathic way of being, develop different units or training modules, and then pilot and refine those, test them out, and then create a whole empathy, training collaborative sort of a project and an ecosystem for good, effective collaboration. Some of the expected outcomes of the training is that it's easy for people to get onboarded. It's easy to get involved, and there's it's a fun, easy path to, grasp the core concepts. There's the expertise development that we have, step-by-step ladder of training to, from beginner to master, and that we can have the multiplier effect, and we do that with the empathy circle training, that you learn the practice and then you can go out and teach others. So we want really a curriculum where everyone can become a trainer, so we can train the 1 billion or 8 billion, people in the world, how to raise the level of empathy and sort of build that shared learning journey, that strengthens. When people learn together, I think it really strengthens bonds and connections with people. So the invitation is, so I want to invite, trainers and facilitators, curriculum designers and researchers, educators, and organizers in general, anyone wanting to build the movement, and especially funders, to join this effort, and to help us identify the key modules, develop the learning pathways, and help us and collaborate on to create something that can serve the movement and the wider public. And what we want to do also is bring together what I would call the empathy tribes. There's a lot of different organizations and practices that are really empathy based, and it's sort of tapping into all of those and seeing if we can create a framework for working together, maybe on this curriculum. For example, active listening, and which is developed by Rogers, and he created the person-centered approach community. There's a whole community for that. There's all kinds of therapeutic processes, like based on empathy, motivational interviewing, for example. And we have the whole academic community who has a lot of different practices and research they're doing. There's processes like focusing, which is also sort of a therapeutic practice, but is very empathy-based. Nonviolent communication is another. Conflict mediation, internal family systems, empathy circles, human-centered design, which I mentioned, people's assemblies, which is taking empathy into politics and policy development and restorative justice, dynamic facilitation. There's so many other practices that really people are part of really the empathy tribe. So let's move the empathy movement from, scattered efforts to shared foundation. This is just in summary. We can build the educational empathy commons and start training more people. And we have in the summit, we have several trainers too, which is really great to have you taking part here. And to spread the empathy practices and strengthen community and democracy, and to really make mutual empathy a core cultural value. So that's what we're really talking about here. And to join this project, I did put the link in. You can go to that URL and add your name to the list, and we can start contributing ideas, modules, and maybe even hold a summit on, specifically this topic. And so inviting you to work together to build the movement. And as you notice, it's the puzzle was a theme that we're putting together the puzzle, and you're part of that missing piece of the puzzle for creating the movement. So that's it. I hope you feel a little bit inspired. If you're a trainer, to get involved, and even if you're not, you can be an organizer. Find some role in this initiative, which is we'll be working on over the next couple of years. So that's it, and I'll bring you back at Spotlight to Jenna. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Edwin. I think the puzzle metaphor works. And I was really struck by how across that canyon, that ridge, where the two sides are separate, each side is holding pieces to the puzzle and part of the solution. So that really brought home. And thank you for your vision for creating an empathy curriculum, and for working on that, and for inviting everyone to join, and for thinking how to make it accessible and as far-reaching as possible. Thank you. So it's my joy now to introduce Susan Christy. Susan Christy has designed and facilitated professional listening, training, and programs for thousands of people in corporations, universities, medical schools, and hospitals all over the country. Of course, teaching empathy is an important part of this work. And she will be speaking about my experience building an empathy listening movement. So thank you so much.
Good morning, folks. I have a little conflict right at this moment. As an educator and a trainer, I'm concerned that many people might want a break about now, and yet I want this 15 minutes to be with you. I'm just bringing up this point. It's partly what I know about biology. Shall I just go on? I guess I will. I would like to introduce myself and my background because I have been so passionate about empathy and empowering people to be more themselves. I am an old friend of darling Bill Stiller. We have kayaked for hours together. I've taken the empathy training. I've become a trainer. I was at Berkeley under the tent with Edwin and others. And I'd like to tell you how I have learned. In 1973, I was a psychology professor in a small community college in Connecticut. And I had the great privilege of teaching working class people in a town where the rug mill had gone out of business. And I tuned into these students. You know what they wanted? They wanted to understand themselves and others better. They wanted to improve their relationships. They wanted to be less stressed a lot of them had self-talk where their critical, interjected parents were driving them nuts. I am a very practical, let's make this, whatever it is, work for us and everybody. And so I'd like to share my experience. Small college. I ran the department. I could teach whatever I want. Would you take a moment and picture how empathy would fit into the following 5 classes that I taught? Child development. We're talking about people being better parents. We're talking about people understanding their own childhood development. I taught child development in the prisons. Oh my goodness. These men and women began to see themselves and their childhoods with tremendous more compassion for themselves, for their parents, for the culture in which they had grown up. It just fits. I also taught psychology of family, much the same. I taught psychology of women. Psychology then became psychology of women and men. Oh my goodness, did the men and women have one another stereotyped, pigeonholed? Oh, lack of respect, contempt. For goodness sakes, put them in an exercise where they play one another and it gets nasty. Now, psychopersonality and human sexuality. In each of those classes, empathy comes in a different form, in a different sequence. Yeah. So what I'm bringing is this background of working with real people and real lives. I'm quite proud of how I have parlayed this into quite a successful career as a trainer and consultant. And I'd like to just mention how I did that. And follow that is I have 8 points that I put together about how to build an empathy movement based on my personal experience. So I came to San Francisco to finish a PhD and on a sabbatical, and then I was recruited into a communications training program, and we developed a 2-day listening program. Oh my goodness, we had a wonderful team of people. It was developed, it was accepted, brought in by places like Pacific Bell, AT&T, British Petroleum. And they paid the big bucks, to fly people in, put them in a hotel. We had them for 2 days, changed their lives. They told their friends, people signed up so fast. Well, I started my own business after that as a consultant. This company owned this listening program. So I taught customer service. Same thing. And then I developed a 1-hour program called How to Work with Difficult People. Every corporations, I did this at about 50 different medical schools, corporations, because people came with somebody in mind. How could they deal with this difficult person? So I want to segue into my 8 ideas. Okay, this is very my developing my career. So at first, as I have attended and worked with empathy circles, I'm not sure how people take that experience into their everyday conversations. To me, it feels like there's some missing pieces about how they quiet their self-talk, about how they paraphrase and encourage people to continue, about how to know when to empathize, listen, and when to assert themselves and take care of their own needs. So I would like to encourage that how can this be expanded to more action? And some of you have some good experience. I'm here to learn from you. I'd like to tell you that when I was teaching in a community college and I said, well, I offer empathy, I don't think it would have flown. Empathy was not part of their language. They were not but they could tell me, my teenagers would tell me, I don't listen. My boss never listens to me, thinks he has all the good ideas. So, and secondly, to have a curriculum. Well, I created a half-day program. This is the Stanford training manual. And I offered it to many different organizations. And I'm feeling great about the curriculum. Now, I've had this 2-day program, this half-day program I own. I would be so happy to share it with all of you. I am really pleased to have developed this over 50 years. Did you notice I said in 1973? That was 53 years ago. Oh, no, I said it started in 1973. That was 53 years ago. I've been around, folks. I've been trying to serve people the best I can. And my point number 3, I feel very strongly about this. It's really helped me. I like to focus in working with consulting clients, in working with participants for training, to focus on the desired outcomes. What do we want them to be able to do based on their time with us? And what would that create as a success in terms of their moving forward very effectively? So picture me with somebody bringing me in because their team isn't getting along. And of course, then the person who's bringing me in is a major piece of the problem. And I almost always ask, now, first I have to, of course, listen, understand what is happening, tune into their needs. And then I say, if we work together and we are very successful in what we want, what would the results look like, feel like, smell like? And they pause. And you know, it's surprising how many people can tell you what success would smell like. You know what empathy smells like. It lightens it just a little bit. And then I put desired outcomes in my proposal to work. And they know that if we do this, we're successful, and it focuses everything I do. What are the desired outcomes? My next 4 ideas have something to do with what we've already been talking about. How do we get into organizations? I'd like to tell you how I got into organizations, because here I was, San Francisco, a new city. I had worked within this little communications corporation. Yeah, well, I thought, I don't know, this listening program. So I decided to teach customer service. It's all the same. But people know they need customer service. You can just imagine how customer service, all of these computer geeks, they think their job is to install or fix computers. And when they come to my program, they realize, oh my God, they need to create a relationship with the client. New idea. How do they manage their expectations? How do they introduce themselves? How do they create satisfaction in their customers? Empathy, a major piece of that. Idea number 5. I gave free talks. And so you have to label this something people want. How do you work with difficult people? I did free talks starting with Lions Club and I'm trying to think of the public organizations where people from companies go and meet. And like at UCSF Medical School and Bechtel, I gave my how to work with difficult people, and they just marched me into the head of training and development and said, bring her in. I believe that I could help create a 1-hour talk that all of you could give. We have to label it very carefully. We have to be filled with practical, actionable. I would love to do that. It would be my privilege. Point number 6, I feel that it's very, very important to customize everything we do to create the deepest level of rapport. And that is about, I brought some extraordinary spiritual people into the corporations. And it seems like we shouldn't have to do this, but we needed to teach them to speak business language. We needed to teach them how to dress. People need to feel like we are like them. Point number 7. I recently attended an empathy workshop here with a group of people who've met regularly. And I came up with a huge concern. I feel very strongly about this. In the empathy circle, some people were kind of memorizing what the person said and repeating it almost in their own words. No, repeating it exactly the words the person said. My sense is they were memorizing in their heads. They didn't have their hearts open. Memorizing and repeating words is not the same as attunement, as being open-hearted, as being curious, and really feeling into the experience and needs of these other people. We do not want people repeating what the speaker said. And my 8th point is, I think it would be very, very difficult to create a standalone, self-managed program on empathy. Teaching empathy is about exercises, demonstrations that give people the deep experience. It brings compassion. It brings understanding on both sides. We need to bring many kinds. I've spent 50 years coming up with experiential exercises and demonstrations. And so, lastly, to segue into the curriculum, I will be glad to help. I will share my half-day program and all the pages, but I want to do this in a way that people are really making it practical and sequential for people. I love the ideas I've heard today. I see myself as selling customer service. I'm going to work with difficult people. My book is for academic people, staff, how to work with faculty because they get treated like second-class citizens. For the last 15 years, all my work has been building compassion for the faculty among the staff and teaching them how to be respected and productive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for sharing your wealth of experience. Thank you for sharing the vastness of your experience. And thank you for offering it to the Empathy Center and for offering to share it with us in a way that is practical and applicable. And I love that you mentioned compassion and understanding. I think that all the other words need to get together with empathy, love, and all the others. And that's a way to grow the movement. So thank you.
Some people might say I've been around.
And then recently I was stuck at the airport for 15 hours, and one of the airline workers was not so pleasant when I came and asked her a question, and I invited her to the empathy circles. She said, "Do you think I need empathy?" I'm like, "I found it really beneficial," I told her. So so thank you. I think there's a lot of work to do. Thank you. Yeah. Bill, thank you so much for being here. It's a real joy to introduce Bill. Bill Filler is a retired special education teacher. Who has worked with at-risk children of all ages for over 30 years. He's been involved in the Empathy Circles since 2017. And he co-created the Empathy Circle Facilitator Training with Lou Zweier and Edwin Rutsch, and has been holding training since March 2020. And he is a member of the Empathy Center Board of Directors. I paused over special ed because I was thinking to point out the children in the background, but I think you'll do that, Bill. So thank you for being here. And you're going to be speaking on bringing the empathy movement message to the California State Democratic Convention. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Yeah, the picture behind me you see is I was a special education teacher for almost 40 years. And the picture is sort of what my goal was, and that's just take my kids out to the beach and allow them to enjoy themselves. So that was a moment that I really treasured, and when I see it, I treasure it all over again. So thank you. After almost 8 years of deep involvement with the empathy movement and the empathy circle that is at its core, I occasionally get intuitional glimpses of what a more empathic culture would be like. The empathy circle is a simple but profoundly effective technique whose goal is to provide everyone in the circle with the experience of being heard and understood, but not judged. Try to think of the last time you had that experience. I don't think it's common. For 40 years, I taught students in extreme circumstances, in danger of being hospitalized, imprisoned, or being removed from their families. Frequently, these students were violent. The greatest lesson I learned is that every act, no matter how impulsive or violent, was a communicative act. At first, I thought that it was hard to believe, but after our team debriefed the acting out incident, we found that the student hadn't been fed, saw a violent act, or experienced something else that upset them. When we could reflect our understanding of the student's situation and try to address it, such as feed them, their violent acts declined significantly, and they started to understand that they can get their needs met through the words as opposed to physical intimidation. The therapist we worked with called this therapeutic rapport. And you've talked about this, and I think Paramita talked about it, and other people. It's another word for making an empathic connection. Um, but it also seems to me that we could use a really large dose of therapeutic rapport in our society as a whole right now. Um, Early on in my involvement in the empathy circle, I was in a circle with a therapist, and they marveled at how quickly and efficiently therapeutic was a rapport was established with everyone in the circle group. Remember, therapists are doing this one-on-one. It takes time, but within the period of, let's say, a half an hour to an hour, everyone in the group, not just dyads, were feeling that they'd kind of achieved that therapeutic rapport. Um, so, looking at the challenges that are facing us, there's no question in my mind that more listening and understanding is exactly what we need. The question then becomes, what can we do to help spread the practice and start the healing? The empathy circle can be a first step to give people a sense of shared community in which creative, humane solutions can emerge. At the California State Convention, a group of four of us sat at the table and offered mutual empathic listening to all who wanted it. There were a handful of people who took us up on our offer. There were different ages, political persuasions, and ethnicities. And now I'm going to share some of the slides from that. And where are you? There it is. Okay. And let's just go. Okay. All right, and you can see that. Let me expand it. All right, and we'll just do it this way. Okay. So I want you to take a look at these people and kind of take a look at what might be the common denominator. And I think what you'll see is the common denominator is that they're all different. They're all different. They're different ages, different ethnicities, different, obviously, men and women. And these are the people who would, and this is the four of us giving some empathic listening. This is another woman, I think Ashley. She was very nice. We spent a long time talking to her. And these are the people. There's a young man who was really into it. He insisted on having his picture with me. Wanted a t-shirt too. These are very rare. Okay. And finally, we came in. There's Adam Schiff, U.S. Senator from California. And Edwin was asking him if he'd have a picture taken with with I Support an Empathy movement. And he said, well, I don't really know what that's about. And so anyway, I was just thinking of all of the um, pictures of people's private parts that are on the internet. I think there are millions. Um, and I was running, I support the empathy. That's a bridge too far. The private part pictures, that's fine. But if whoa, you have to make a statement about empathy. We had a local reporter from a local station, KPIX, and he interviewed Edwin and I, and he seemed to think that we had a good idea, but his thing was nobody was listening. He asked us what could make people listen. Edwin replied that sometimes things have to get so bad for people to shake themselves from their complacency and search for some alternatives. Periodically, we'd walk around the hall to see if people would have their picture taken, as you've seen. And again, but a lot of them said, oh, I can't have that picture taken. I'm not allowed to take it. And it just seemed that this just was fear, unnecessary fear. And what I see that is what I call institutional blindness. We have arrived at a time when many of our institutions have lost touch with their purpose amid sound bites, photo ops, and naked greed. I handed one of our business cards to U.S. Senator Adam Schiff, a man I admire, and he seemed very uncomfortable. He didn't in those pictures, but when I handed him the business card, he seemed really uncomfortable. I didn't take it personally. I'm sure he's constantly assaulted by all sorts of requests, and I don't know if I could be as gracious as he was under the same circumstances. In that moment, however, I got a glimpse of what it would be like to live in a society with more empathy as opposed to whatever this is that we live in now. What I saw were leaders who sought out people with new ideas guided by their empathic experience. Imagine, if you will, being a leader who doesn't have to worry about political violence, soliciting funds for re-election, or smear campaigns, but can spend their time looking for people with new ideas. What effect would that have on the rest of us? I think it would encourage us to pitch in and to help build the community in which we would all like to live. When people feel valued, they value their communities. This vision of a culture of empathy includes all of us. We've been to the California State Republican Convention as well, and demonstrations on both the left and the right. We attempt to get them into empathy circles. It doesn't always work, but when it does, both participants feel better. I know many of you will shake your heads and think that the gulf is too wide, the scars too deep. I can only tell you what I've seen, and that is when people feel heard and understood, they feel better, they feel valued, and they are ready to listen to others. How bad must it get? We don't have to find out if we just started to listen to each other. Those of you who hear these words and fear their pull can help. The empathy movement is not promising some far-off goal, but provides a short experience of what it actually would be like to live in a culture with more empathy. You can experience too later in this summit. As wiser people than I have said, be the change you want to see. As for us, we'll be at the next convention, taking the empathy tent to the streets, holding online empathy cafes, online trainings, in-person trainings, and trying to help one more person to be heard. We invite you to join us. And I will put the link to our next training in April 18th in the link. So in the chat, sorry. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you, Edwin, and you, and who else went with you? The two of you? Who else was there?
Well, Christine, my partner, and William
And,
Kingsbury from the Santa Barbara chapter.
and Joan was there too.
And Joan was there too, yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Edwin's partner.
Thank you for going to the Democratic Convention and for promoting empathy. And the people are all different, and they all have a shared humanity, and they all support the empathy movement. And that's what we all really need to recognize, I think. I think that was the message. Thank you so much for doing that and for holding a candle in this darkness. Thank you. Let's see. Jillian Lee Meyer, I have the joy to introduce you. Welcome to the Empathy Summit, a dual PhD student in social psychology and cognitive science, studying moral psychology, viewpoint diversity, and empathy. And Julian's topic will be exercising empathy and strengthening the empathy movement. And thank you. I look forward to listening. I'm passionate about the idea of moral psychology and curious to hear more about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Get this pulled up. Yeah, I have loved these conversations so far. They've been really cool. I have recently started doing some work on empathy. Like you heard, I'm a dual PhD student in social psychology and cognitive science. And I've always really connected a lot with the idea of empathy. I've always felt like a very empathic person, for better and for worse, you know? And so getting into this virtue a little more specifically has been fun as I've started to go in a more character education route with my moral psychology work. And also, this is the first time that I'm kind of giving this presentation and officially presenting my model here with empathy. And so I want to thank Edwin for giving me the platform to do that, and all of you for being here and listening. So yes, my name is Jillian Lee Meyer, and I'm going to be talking about my model of empathy, which I call exercising empathy. I work part-time as a group fitness instructor for things like jazzercise type classes, bar fitness, step aerobics, water aerobics, lots of fun stuff. And so this combination of kind of my research with empathy, with thinking about the physical manifestation performance and play and a lot of the stuff that we've talked about today. I really am passionate about that connection. I'm excited to explore that with you. So just a little overview of the model, and what I'll go a little deeper into is, first of all, the deficit of empathy, the part that I don't really need to convince you guys of. What happens when we don't have empathy or enough empathy? What does that look like? Then on the flip side, some people have kind of hinted at this in the presentations and in the chat, but the idea almost of an excess of empathy, where we have so much empathy that we're prone to biases outside of what we're being empathetic to or for. And then finally, the important part of my model, it's a virtue education inspired model, where I'm going to talk about Aristotle and the golden mean, which is where he sees phronesis or practical wisdom when it comes to being a good, flourishing person, as the ability to find that middle ground between the deficiency or the excess of a virtue. Great. Okay, so the part that we're all going to really like, right? Barack Obama has a famous quote: "It seems like we got an empathy shortage, an empathy deficit." And again, that's something we've been talking about this whole presentation. I totally agree with that, that in a lot of situations, we are just lacking the ability or even the desire or motivation to understand other people. And I see that as a really big problem in our politics and our social and cultural lives, all of that. So what do I mean by deficit? We have the obvious, you have no empathy, the inability to empathize, or the unwillingness to empathize, apathy, and that can be problematic, linked to all sorts of antisocial behaviors and outcomes, things like that. So yeah, don't want to not have empathy. But then we also kind of, we get into like not enough empathy, which is that deficit, you know, where we talked about Einfühlung earlier, the German origin of empathy, which means feeling into. So there's a sense of like almost getting at that physicalness of empathy, where it's not just like separation and it's sympathy, where you're just, you know, kind of imagining, but really like getting deeper into that feeling. And I think that is an important part of what distinguishes true empathy from just kind of a deficit of it. And so even these deficits, you know, not just completely like, there's research on sociopaths or people lacking empathy completely, but also just not getting quite to that full empathy that we're really talking about, if that makes sense. So deficit of empathy kind of looks like that in my model. And then someone mentioned this earlier too. You see, I was so excited the whole time today because I was like, yep, I'm going to talk about that, going to talk about that. So I'll talk about connecting at the end, but would love to hear all your thoughts on this. This is something that academics have started to focus on really heavily. So Elon said, the fundamental weakness of Western civilization is empathy, which, you know, just that statement, like, it's just, what in the world? Like, can you imagine saying that empathy is the fundamental weakness of our civilization? Like, what a strong statement to think about. But academics have started to think about that, and they've started to say, okay, well, you know, what does that mean? What does that mean, like over empathizing? I'll talk about that here. So excess. We talked about deficiency, what happens when you don't have enough empathy, but what do these academics mean by like dark sides of empathy or bad empathy? There's lots of books out there now. Paul Bloom and Against Empathy, Fritz Breithaupt, Dark Sides of Empathy. Ali Stuckley, she has Toxic Empathy. Gad Saad talks about suicidal empathy. So if any of those sound interesting to you, definitely go look up those books for more information. But the way that Paul Bloom describes it, I think is really good, where he talks about spotlight empathy. So over empathizing with a particular individual or group or something like that. And that can lead you to lots of cognitive biases when it comes to seeing the outside world, seeing the people kind of in opposition to who you're spotlight empathizing with. And this comes with a lot of evolutionary advantages when we have these cognitive biases to people outside of our empathetic circles. So you think like, having a prioritization for family members when it comes to protecting them versus protecting a stranger. You know, that's a good thing. Like, you're protecting your family, you're protecting the ones close to you. And it's okay to instinctively feel that. It's not wrong, or you should question, like, should I be empathizing with my kid more than I am a total stranger? Like, it's intuitive. And I think that is a good thing. Another thing, you know, when you're presented, there's lots of research on this, when you're presented with a story about 1,000 children who are starving in Africa versus you see a video of one child and they center on the the video of the child and their life story and what they're going through and what they need and all that stuff. We have more of a pull of empathy there that again gets to that like physical, like it's more of a moral emotion versus just like a cognitive, or like you're just kind of thinking about feeling for the child. And that often motivates us into action. You know, if you tell people there are 1,000 people in this city in Africa who are starving, how much would you donate? They're less likely to donate money and willing to donate so much less than if you focus on that one child or that one individual. So in this sense, there's that spotlight empathy. You're focusing on that one person, and that could lead you to cognitive biases, you know, around that individual or that group or whatever. And you can see how kind of transferring that into politics, then that could be a disadvantage or an evolutionary mismatch of the moral intuition or emotion that connects us to empathy, where we're focusing so hard on an individual or a group that we feel like everyone else in the world totally lacks empathy. And so in Toxic Empathy, that book, this is what she talks about a lot. Like if you're centered, you're like, I am empathizing with this group, I am the one that has empathy. It's so much harder to see the people on opposing sides of you as being empathetic people. So that's where I think this excess becomes really important, and that they're focusing a lot in academia. Now I'll go into this in a second of whether I think that is actually empathy or whether it's something else, which is something Edwin and I have explored a lot, this defining empathy idea, because I totally agree. There's so many different definitions out there and models. A bunch of academics, including my advisor, Fritz Breithaupt, they recently got an article accepted, getting published soon, I think, on, it's like all the leading researchers in empathy, the psychologists and everything, on defining empathy. And they come up with like, I think it's 11 different definitions of empathy. So when I say there's a lot out there right now, there's a lot out there. What do we actually mean by empathy? So this is where my model comes in. How are we defining empathy? What is empathy? What is not empathy? And this goes back to Aristotle and virtue ethics. Like I said, something taught in character education a lot. It's not a matter of picking a virtue like honesty or courage and maximizing that virtue. How do I be the most honest person, the most courageous person? But about finding that phronesis, that practical wisdom in the middle, where you're saying, okay, in this situation, this amount of honesty is appropriate, or this amount of bravery. In this sense, the perfect amount of empathy, or the range of a good amount of empathy. So that's what he's describing here. Virtue is the golden mean between two vices, the one of excess and the other of deficiency. It reminds me of Goldilocks a lot, like not too much or not too little. So this balance, this middle ground of the situationally correct amount of empathy. So in the way that I see it, when we talk about this golden mean in virtue theory, we talk about honesty. And on one end, you don't have honesty, you're a liar, or you're deceptive or something. But then on the farther end, you can imagine like, could be a little too blunt, or like honest when you don't, necessarily need to. Situationally, you kind of have to navigate that. And that's where you find true, possibly moral or pro-social behaviors, more human flourishing, when you're able to navigate these situations and find the best way to act. So another one is bravery. So you have no bravery, you're a coward, but if you're just completely brave, maybe you're impulsive or you're reckless. But my point here is that I don't think that I would consider bluntness or recklessness to be honest or brave, So we say, like, if we're talking about the ends of this spectrum of not honest at all or way too honest, not honest at all I see as lying, and too honest I see as bluntness. You see what I mean? So when it comes to talking about empathy, the way that it's defined, there's like cognitive empathy relating to Paul Bloom's rational compassion. But where do you draw that line between empathy and sympathy? Like there's a cognitive difference there where you're not feeling into, you're almost just kind of imagining into or thinking about, and so I don't know that I would consider that empathy. And then on the far end, when they talk about spotlight empathy or dark sides of empathy, when you're over empathizing with a particular group and you're experiencing cognitive biases for your opposers, I don't know that I would call that empathy either. And so when I consider empathy, I'll talk a little about the sports metaphor here that you can see. I think a lot about training muscles as similar to training morality. And so we've heard that language a couple times today, which I found exciting. But when you train a muscle, you don't want to undertrain it. If you undertrain it, you're never going to get that growth if you, stop immediately every time something feels hard. But you don't want to overtrain it either, because then you get injury and fatigue and all these other negative consequences. But training your muscle, like really true exercise, is about finding that middle ground. And that middle ground can shift. So maybe you can do a lot heavier weights when you do bicep curls versus delt flies, you know, like finding that, where am I over exercising? Where am I under exercising? I think that's really important when we consider virtues like empathy. That kind of analogy, I think it works really well, both with the philosophical theory it relates to, and then also just imagining that physicalness again. And so that's why I call it exercising empathy model, because you want to exercise it kind of the right amount. Something else I wanted to bring up that I thought you guys might find interesting is a Substack that my research assistants and I are now running. It's called The Inner Workout. So this is comparing those ideas of moral cultivation or muscle cultivation. I've written a couple pieces on empathy, so I talk about this exercising empathy model, as well as group exercising empathy. Like I said, I'm a fitness instructor, so I talk about some of the research of things like dance movement therapy and, you know, people dancing together or kind of mirroring each other's actions and performance or acting, how that can lead to increased feelings of empathy and connection and things like that. So that one was a really fun and personal one to write. I like that. But then there's other things that my research assistants write about, like highlights on certain sports athletes and, you know, what they do to develop their character. I'm working on one right now about Bobby Knight and why he's so controversial in his character development. If you know IU football, go Hoosiers, but or IU basketball rather. But anyway, yeah, so I'm always looking for contributors to this. And so with a lot of the stuff that I heard today, I was excited at the prospect of some of you sharing your ideas with us on the Substack. Short form writing, and so it's like 1,000 words, something like that. And it can be a little more blog posty, so I find it a little more fun than academic writing. But it reaches a lot of people. And I think that talking about this kind of stuff, this connection and empathy and like that physicalness of empathy, I guess. I'm really enjoying exploring that. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on my model and other insights that you have. But please do connect. We also run a psychology TikTok. We've got our Substack, but LinkedIn, my website. Again, I would love to chat with you. Thank you so much.
Wow, Jillian, thank you. Thank you for your beautiful presentation, for what you're investigating. And I see that much more will come from your work. I am passionate about morals, ethics. I call it embodied virtue, or kindness and discernment. When you talk about honesty versus, and bluntness, it has to be tempered with kindness. Empathy, not being empathy. Edwin definitely agrees with that, and many of us here. And so, yeah, what is biased is not empathy. So thank you very much for sharing all that and for your wonderful GIFs and I don't know how you say that, GIFs. And thank you. A equals A. I like that one. Tell me where to find it. I'll go explore your blog. So thank you so much. So we can now take, I guess, we're going to the empathy circle. And I'm now turning it over to our Empathy Circle host, Jonathan Gordon. And Jonathan Gordon has been supporting the empathy movement for, I believe, well over 2 years as an empathy trainer, facilitator, and supporter of the Empathy Summit. So thank you very much, Jonathan, for introducing the Empathy Circle. Oh, you're muted. You need to unmute.
Thank you very much. So first, I'd like to ask everyone to please fill out the Summit feedback form. And there is a link in the chat. And if you're able, we'd like you to support the work we're doing by donating to the Empathy Center. And that link also is in the chat. I believe Edwin's posting it right now. Now, if you've done training and can facilitate an empathy circle, please put a -ECF on the end of your name. We will be recording some of the empathy circles. And if you do not want to be recorded in the empathy circle, add a NR, means no record, after your name. And here's a link that's going to be put into the chat. on a PDF on how to do an empathy circle. Now, I want to point this out to everyone that you have to save your chat more at the end of the session, because if you do a save and someone adds something to it, then you don't get that. So in order to get all these valuable links and the conversation in the chat, then you have to do a save. If you look at the top of the chat screen, you'll see 3 little dots, and you click on the dots, and then it says save. So thank you very much. So now I'm going to give a brief introduction to how we do an empathy circle. And I'll be doing this while Edwin is setting up our rooms. An empathy circle is comprised of, between 3 and 5 participants. And that everyone comes together and agrees to do a structured dialogue. And this dialogue is based upon mutual active listening. And in addition, in our empathy circles, we stress the values, the core values of empathy, mutuality, openness, and care. And so just by participating in an empathy circle, you can grow your ability to be mutual and your ability to be empathetic, and you learn openness both in yourself and in openness and listening to others. And most importantly, you learn to care because you're focusing your attention on an individual. I'm going to start out by explaining the 4 roles in an empathy circle. The speaker is these empathy circles give an opportunity for everyone who joins the circle to have a chance to speak their mind. And usually on an empathy circle, a topic is selected. And I believe the topic, of course, today is how do we build the empathy movement? Or topic could be what one of the speakers talked about and what impressed you in the speaking. And most importantly, and this is so important, you can also speak about whatever is on your mind. The speaker starts out and chooses a listener, and the speaker speaks to the listener in little small chunks. And the speaker pauses so that the active listener can reflect back what they heard. Now, I want to make a point here. You're not reflecting back like in a mimicking tone. What you're trying to do is to capture the essence of what the speaker said and say it back to them. And then the speaker often, or at least we like to encourage the speaker to acknowledge that the listener actually heard what they said. And a speaker, if you weren't heard, you have every right to say, I didn't quite get across my idea. And also the listener, active listener, reflective listener, if they lose track, well, just be honest and say, listen, I don't quite understand you. Could you repeat that? And so that's the role of the speaker. And the speaker usually gets between 3 and 5 minutes of time to speak, and that'll be determined by your facilitator. That'll be assigned into your group. The active listener, as I mentioned, reflects back what the speaker says in their own words, and they refrain from asking questions. They don't advise. They don't sympathize. They don't judge. They try not to agree or disagree. the speaker's role is simply to listen earnestly to the speaker and reflect back what they heard so that the speaker knows that they were understood. Everyone else in the room or circle is a silent listener, and they should pay attention to what is going on. And when it's their turn to speak, they can actually talk about what they heard the previous speaker and active listener talking about. Or if they want to, when it's their turn, they could bring up a new topic or the topic of choice. In any event, the silent listener should be respectful, should be quiet, try not to distract, and just wait their turn and listen to what's going on in the circle. Now, I want to be very clear about this. If somebody needs a bio break or has a disruption, say your phone rings, don't worry about it. Just turn off your camera and microphone, take care of business, and rejoin the circle. Now, lastly, there will be a facilitator in each room, and the facilitator should have a little ECF after their name. And the facilitator will be keeping time, and this could be a simple timekeeping where or it could be an electronic digital monitor on the screen. And the facilitator can also keep track of how many turns each person has. The goal in the time that we have today for our empathy circle is that everyone gets to speak at least 3 times, and everyone gets to reflect at least 3 times. And also, I want to make this is so central to mutuality. The facilitator actually takes part in the circle, and the facilitator can speak on the topic, and they reflect. And occasionally, a facilitator will intervene to keep things on track. Let's see now. Edwin, how are we doing?
We're very good. We're all set, ready to go whenever you're done.
Edwin, did I leave anything out?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, thank you all. And let's all have an empathy circle. Now, remember, we will be here when the circle's over. So we come back and everyone gets a chance to do a little debrief and say goodbye to everyone. So don't just leave when the circle's over. Come back to the room.
Yeah, and we'll be back here in an hour. We'll be in the circles for 1 hour, 3-minute turns. The topic is what was the topic? Just your thoughts on how to build the empathy movement. I'll get to your question in a second. The room 1 will be Jana, which I'll join, and then the facilitator room 2 will be Jonathan will facilitate, and room 3 Bill and Sharon. Yeah, you're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I need to leave in about 35 minutes. Should I not participate at all, or should I
You
just
can
be a listen?
participate and leave as you need to. It'd be good to have you take part.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I'm putting extra people in each room. Just some people kind of drop out at this point. So we're all set to go. We're going to go for 1 hour. That's 10 after the hour. And then I'll send a reminder, and then we'll all come back. And here we go. Been invited. This is the speakers circle here. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
And you're facilitating, Jenna.
All right. So Susan suggested a bio break. So if you would like to do that first, can we do that first, Edwin?
What I would say is just go. If you need to take a bio break, just close your window and go. I mean, just turn off your video, and then it's whoever needs to go, just go take care of yourself or in any way, get some food or something. But I think we should just keep it going. Otherwise, we'll lose too much time.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up this timer. I'm using the Zoom app timer, and it's a 3-minute timer. And let's see. So Susan is experienced with empathy circles. Is there anyone else here who has experience with empathy circles besides Edwin and me? Jillian.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And Martin too. All right. So Stuart,
And
you're new to
Susan.
empathy circles. It's wonderful. Oh, let me see. It started going. So I will model being the first listener. And yeah, I do what you don't like so much, Susan, which is just listen and reflect the words. This is a very basic foundational practice. And then the heart slowly opens as we learn to reflect and first hear. It's kind of as we're moving the gears and the driving. And, for the first time, it's a little difficult. So we just make it very simple. And that's why the empathy circle practice is really an introductory practice that you can grow on to become whatever, like Luz Wire and Edwin and others. So who would like to be the first speaker?
And we're doing 3-minute turns, right?
Right, 3-minute
Mhm.
turns, and the topic is how can we build an empathy movement?
Or
I'm
whatever's on
happy to
your
go.
mind.
Or whatever's on your mind, yes. And the empathy circle is a free speech space, so you can say whatever you want. And when you're reflecting, just reflect. Don't interject or question or say wow or agree or disagree. But when it's your turn to speak, your turn will come up next if you're the listener. Then you'll get to do all that. You can do whatever you want when it's your turn for 3 minutes, not for very long. And as the facilitator, when people are experienced, you're basically just a timekeeper. And when people are less experienced, if someone is really not getting the reflection, I might, reflect what they said if they're really feeling not heard after the second or third time. But I don't know if that will be an issue here. And if you're the speaker and you don't feel heard, you can restate, again what you said using other words or the same words, or just emphasize some point that you feel needs to be reflected. And if you're the listener and the speaker is speaking too fast, too much, like I'm doing now, you can ask them to pause and slow down so that you can just do chunks, small pieces if you want. So say one or two ideas each time and then pause, and the speaker pauses. And what else?
Let's get into it. Let's just
Let's
start.
go. Okay, we heard an explanation and there's another one. So who's the first listener? This first speaker?
Jillian was going. She said she was ready to
Okay,
go.
great. Okay, go ahead.
Edwin was like, you already said it, so you're in. Yeah, well, this has just been so fun so far. I attended the last Empathy Summit, but didn't speak. And so it's been fun to think a little more closely about my ideas with my research and how they've related to what everybody else has talked about.
So you've already participated in Empathy Summit, but you weren't a speaker, and it was really fun for you to reflect in between on how to build an empathy movement and how that relates to what you're doing in your research, and then to bring that forward as a speaker.
Yeah, definitely. When I first started, when I was thinking about this summit and thinking about strengthening the empathy movement, obviously my first thought was, well, we need more, education on it. We need more practical behavioral things like, in classrooms or in workshops or things like that. But then that's when I started hesitating and started thinking about applying my model and what the implications of that would mean for more empathy education.
So I'm not quite sure if I got it, but you were thinking at first one way of like, that we need more behavioral models or something to bring it into the classroom, but then you thought how to, or something like that, and you can fix it again.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And then
No,
you
that's
thought how
exactly
you want more about what you're actually doing and how you're actually thinking about empathy and how you want to bring that into the empathy movement.
Yes, yeah, that is exactly right. Yeah. With my academic placement in social psychology, like I said in my presentation, there's a lot of talk about what is wrong with empathy or what we shouldn't be teaching people about empathy. And it really made me think critically about the empathy movement and how I felt about what these educational approaches or tools should look like.
So in social psychology now in your area, there's all of this discussion and emphasis on all the toxic, sinful, terrible empathy. And so it really made you think critically about what the empathy movement really should look like and what it can look like in a constructive way.
Yeah. It made me think of Allie Beth Stuckley's book on toxic empathy. And she talks about how progressives use the term empathy to claim that a lot of conservatives don't have empathy in a lot of their political positions. So coupling that, where it was messages to conservatives about, hey, like, you guys are empathetic, but liberals use that word against us. And then also how people approach it in academia now, the against empathy stuff. I just wondered if doing something like, hey, we're going to teach empathy, if that's ever going to become criticized, like, oh, but you don't know what it means to be empathetic, so how can you teach us about empathy, as people are starting to associate it more negatively.
So reflecting on how toxic empathy, how empathy is being hurled at conservatives, and for example, that how promoting an empathy movement might actually hurt the empathy movement, like it could be criticized, and people see some issue with it.
Yeah, you put it better than me at the end. I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan, you want to listen to me?
I would be delighted.
Well, I guess I'll continue with moral virtue. I really, having had my own kind of difficult encounter with the gangster class. You can reflect that. I'm just going to do pieces.
So you've had experience with the gangster class. Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a lot of human rights, and I have paid a personal price for that.
Whoa, human rights, and you have suffered from that.
Yeah, so I really recognized that there was a huge need for morals, ethics, virtue, human values, universal human values, and have been passionate about getting that message out, our common humanity.
Wow, so you've gotten the message out about values and humanity, but somehow it hasn't been received.
Well, it was from the human rights work that and the harm that I see people doing, and the personal difficulty that I encountered as well, that really brought it home to me that we need morality and ethics and universal human values, and of course empathy and compassion and love and kindness and honesty.
Yeah, so we need this compassion and honesty, and I would say heartfelt approach.
So even if I do something simple like leading a settling meditation, of mindfulness to the breath, I always mention that this is our moral backbone, and to never forget that we're strengthening and lengthening our moral backbone.
Wow, so even teaching, interesting. Mindfulness and meditation. This is our moral background.
Yeah, and I've been combining the the empathy circles with universal human values.
What a combination, values and empathy. Uh-huh.
And maybe for the next summit, maybe I'll talk about that.
You could talk about that at the next summit.
Thank you. I feel heard. I took too much time. Thank you. So
So
you
I,
pick your, yeah.
I Martin,
Okay,
are you available to be my listener?
I will do my best.
Oh, Martin. So I have chosen in my career not to lead with the word empathy. I'm wondering if that's in the everyday people's vocabulary.
Right. So you've chosen not to use the word empathy because a lot of people don't seem to know what that is, and so you might not hit home with it.
I would like to use language that they use. I would like to respond to their particular needs and what they want in my title.
So in your title, you want to have words that resonate with your audience.
Yes, and as a psychology teacher, I learned that we need to be really careful to use rapport building words. I find that people can find things wrong with empathy. I don't find anything wrong with empathy, but I think it's become a trigger word for some people.
Yes. So the reason you don't want to use the word empathy is because it can trigger your audience for some people. So you prefer to use words that resonate with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Like my listening program went big time with universities and corporations, and they know they want to be listened to.
Yeah. So your listening program, which doesn't use the word empathy, resonated and went over well with the various audiences that you have.
Just to clarify, I use the word empathy in the process of providing skills, but I don't lead with it.
Right. So empathy is embedded in the program, but it's not used in the title.
What a great paraphrase. Thank you. I'm not clear about what the desired outcome for the participants of empathy circles is.
So interesting. So you're not really sure with empathy circles what the desired outcome is for the participants.
I don't see them prepared to go out and use this in everyday conversations. I understand they get what it's like to be heard and understood, but can they really do it?
So yes, so the participants have the experience of being heard and understood, but does that transfer into the everyday life outside of the empathy circle?
Thank you so much.
Okay,
and you become the speaker. That's really, really great.
Okay, thank you. Well, Stuart, I see you.
Hello.
Right there, I can see you. Would you be my listener?
I'd be honored.
Okay. Well, I must say that I don't really have a lot of ideas about how to, move the empathy movement into a larger, more comprehensive, universal organization that has 8 billion people in it.
Right. So I'm hearing that you don't have any ideas about tackling such a big challenge of that many people and building things to scale. Right.
Moving up. I perhaps that's not one of my skill sets. However, one can't help but noticing that empathy, it seems to be on the edge of being pretty fashionable, and one of the things that starts something on a big roll is like moving. I mean, they say leaders only lead in 2 things, and that's morality and fashion.
So morality and fashion, maybe around the word empathy, is changing. And maybe the time is now, and the time is ready to be able to take on this kind of challenge. I'm hearing.
Yes, yeah. Perhaps the negativity that we're experiencing in some of the books that Jillian was referring to, and certainly Edwin has talked about quite a bit. Maybe those are sort of necessary inputs to the talk in the society about what is this empathy thing. I like Edwin's focus on let's get to what it is. What is the definition?
Right. So the criticisms, the negativity around the word may actually be interesting symptoms of a discussion actually happening, and a discussion that is needed in order to add some more definition and in order for people to work out where they stand.
Yes, I think so. And are there some instances, as Bloom and others refer to, of when we empathize so much that we go over the top? I don't know whether that would be into what you might call the super woke nature of some of the arguments that one hears out there on today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm hearing that there are perceptions of it being too much from words like super woke, but also, are these real things? Can we really go too far in one direction?
Yes, are they real? Okay, that's interesting. Are they real? They certainly are real in the sense that they're out there and we're talking about them.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about my experiences of, as I mentioned, what I sort of joke about having my empathy surgically removed in British boarding school, and then refining it again. Those experiences kind of suggest that empathy is something very, very real and that is very, very important.
Mm. So empathy is something that is very real, something very important, and your sort of joke, but not entirely a joke, about having it removed from British boarding school is part of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much.
It's so hard not to say what you want to say, isn't it?
Isn't
it?
So you can select your listener, Stuart.
Edwin.
Okay, listening.
Back at you.
And I was hearing that it's hard not to respond to people when they talk. So yeah.
Yes, I have a chapter in my book about the abuse that I suffered when I was young, a very different kind. And I sometimes wonder how much people who've been through traumatic things in their youth become interested in empathy as a thing and want to work with people around these kinds of topics.
Yeah, so you've written about your experience with abuse, and you're just wondering, if other people. I didn't quite catch that last part.
I meet quite a lot of people who work in roughly in this field, in the field of empathy, who have childhood experiences that maybe perhaps make them dwell on what empathy is, and they're drawn to this kind of work.
So people who have had abuse like you did, you're thinking that maybe they are the ones that are drawn to this kind of work because that experience.
A little, not everyone, perhaps. What I actually want to say is it's interesting with both Susan's point earlier of you have to meet people where they are, and dressing the right way, learning the right language to talk to business people, and tackling the problems they have. That really resonates with me because I spent a long time really resisting that. I want to look like I want to look, but actually having a kind of a mask can really be helpful.
So you're just addressing what Susan was talking about, that you sort of want to meet people where they are. If you're in business, you want to dress business-like, and others, and you'd actually had sort of resisted that, but it sounds like you coming around to that idea.
Yeah. And for me, it's linked to what Gillian said. I love this framing of empathy as a muscle, as something that is about strength and power. I know it's a deeper model than that, but this idea of just projecting strength, there's a lot of resistance with the organizations I've worked with. The things I do with them, the physical empathy things, are they will say things like, "Oh, I'm not susceptible to these kinds of things," or "I'm not." They see it as a kind of weakness. And what I tend to do is tell them up front that some of the best people I've worked with physical empathy are actors, athletes, musicians, dancers, right? What I've done there is by naming athletes, actors, and musicians, those are the hero occupations. When teenagers are fans of those three things, those are the big ones. It's what everybody wants to be like. So by framing empathy as a skill, a hard skill that you can be good at, I think is one way in. And it's my reflection on the great stuff that both Susan and Gillian said.
Okay, so a lot of people think empathy is a weakness, and you try to frame it as a strength by saying that actors and sports people and certain groups are very empathic, and that sort of makes the case for its benefit.
Kind of. Because I'm being very specific about physical empathy.
Oh, and then this is about physical empathy that you're kind of talking about the physical
I've worked with rather than those people as a group.
and people you've worked with. Yeah. So that was the time, and I guess I'm up and speak to you, Jana, since you were Julian. Jillian was the first speaker, so I'll speak to Jillian. Yeah, you're still muted. I guess I'm going to address. I think that would be a good topic. Is what are the desired outcomes of an empathy circle? Maybe we should have an empathy circle on that. And I'll just mention we just did a 8-hour empathy circle marathon. So for 8 hours, we just did, and so maybe that would be a good topic for another marathon.
Yeah, so you're thinking about doing an empathy circle, and why are we doing an empathy circle, and maybe doing another really long set of empathy circles or one really long empathy circle again.
And I do know there's an outcome that comes from these empathy circles. Like somebody just, for example, told a story. She said that she was driving with her son to San Francisco from Santa Barbara, and her son said something about the family that triggered her, and then she started getting very defensive. And then her son said, "Yeah, yeah, whatever." So kind of just dismissing everything, and the conversation was coming to an end. And then she said, "Oh, I do empathy circles." So she remembered her empathy, and she started empathically listening to him. And she said that the conversations totally turned around, and it was like a great day that they had because So I think that's one of the benefits or outcomes.
Yeah, so you've seen outcomes in the past of empathy circles, such as this example with the woman and her kid, and how he said something that immediately made her defensive and made her wanted to respond in ways, that we don't do in empathy circles, but instead she thought about her training there and learning to listen before talking.
And the other is empathy. I'm all for sort of meeting people where they are. But you got to have a vocabulary too, and I mean every word becomes contested. Words like freedom and justice are just as contested as empathy, and so I'm kind of like you just have to build the case for it and model it So I kind of stick with the word, but I also use the word listening because that's a simpler word, but. I think you just have to sort of defend the word.
Sure. So when thinking about how do we define or operationalize empathy, it's really more about modeling what we mean by empathy than trying to kind of argue about it.
Well, it's more the let's give up on the word empathy because it's too many people disagree with it. It's like instead let's kind of articulate what it means and demonstrate what it means. Because all the words can become contested, meaning people argue over what the meaning is.
I see. Yeah. So rather than just kind of throwing out the word or the idea of defining it entirely, thinking more about the process of showing, what we consider empathy.
But I'm going to just say one last thing is even Clinton. He said, "What it depends on what the meaning of is." Even the word "is" was contested, right?
Sure.
You just want to reflect that, and then I feel heard.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So what do any of these words mean anyway?
I feel heard.
Great. Okay, what about Susan? Gonna be my listener?
I'd love that.
Awesome. All right. Outcomes of empathy circles. I like that idea. Like, what are we strengthening the empathy movement for? What's the purpose? Something that I have kind of gravitated toward in my research is studying affective polarization and how we can depolarize people's views or emotions about the other side. Not necessarily their political views, but how they feel about people who oppose them.
Yes, so you're really wanting to work with polarization and how people can use empathy to bridge that gap.
Yes, exactly. I've seen some cool work on it. One of my favorite examples is two people who were sitting at a table and they were talking about gun rights. And one person was very pro gun rights, everybody should have a gun. And the other person was, no, nobody should have a gun. And they talked about their stories. And the person who was pro gun rights was talking about how someone had, broken into his home and, tried to rob them and everything and like tried to hurt his family. But, since he had a gun, like he was able to protect them. And then someone on the other side had a kid who was impacted in some way by a school shooting. And so in their eyes, they were saying, look, like no guns at all. But it was that like conversation that was able to spark whatever that like feeling into the other one is. Like when you're just saying like, no, I think everyone should have guns versus no one should have guns. You're not getting that like, oh my gosh, I feel you, I hear you.
So the two sides of guns, we should have guns, no. Came to life when people told their stories and they got to understand one another better.
Exactly. And I think one of the benefits of something like this empathy circle is, although it might be the hardest part for a lot of us, is that listening, like not putting in your views, not arguing, not saying, well, that point depends on this point. It's just full time for the person speaking to like be able to tell their story and not feel like they have to get it out quickly or get defensive or something like that.
Right. So when you provide empathy, people have a chance to continue and go deeper with what they would like to say. It gets more interesting.
Yes, yeah. And so that reminds me of the feeling into definition of empathy again. I center a lot of my thoughts on what empathy means around that just because it was the first definition of it. And it like you said, I like the word that you use, deeper, like understanding deeper. The deeper you can go, the farther you're feeling into.
Yeah, so you have found that by providing empathy, people really become more alive and deeper, and it helps you not take over.
Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. I feel heard.
Yeah. Oh, so how about Jillian be my listener?
Sure.
Oh no, I need to choose somebody else. Stuart, please.
Hello.
Hello. So I feel like I have demonstrated less repeating what the person said and trying briefly to get to the essence of it as a paraphrase. And I'm just thinking that that's closer to the skills that people could take into their everyday life.
So I hear that simply being a machine that repeats what people have said isn't as valuable as responding in a way that a human does, through your full person rather than just the words.
Yeah, I'm going to change my topic. The key to my having this fabulous consulting program, whole career, um, was having a 1 hour program. And I would love to develop a 1 hour program for all of us.
So I'm hearing that you had this incredibly successful and rewarding career. There's a sense of legacy here that you'd like to see that live on and be developed for everybody.
It's like, how do you create something that grabs people and they want more? I have some beginning thoughts on that. What is it like to help other people feel heard and understood and respected and cared about?
So the sense, the feeling of genuinely understanding people and helping them get that when they really felt heard, what is that feeling like?
Right. And how could we deliver that? And we need to avoid trigger words. Even compassion can get a little weird sometimes.
So the core of what we need to be delivering is an emotion that people feel, the feeling of being heard, and we need to cut out anything that might distract them from that, including these troublesome words.
I want to have people heard and understood and respected and cared about, and I want the same thing. Let's see how we can put that in an hour-long speech and sell it. Bring us back.
So all of that was said before, building up to this sense, this feeling that we want to give people, how do we encapsulate that in an hour-long speech and crucially sell it?
Have people bring us in for more. Thank you. I think our time is up.
And have people bring us in for more.
Yes. I can continue here.
No,
Even
it's Stuart's turn. He should, just to keep.
Please.
I'll continue on that topic then.
Select your listener.
Oh, sorry. Martin. Would you kindly be my speaker, Martin? Or my listener?
Yep.
Excuse me, I'm feeling tired right now. This question of how do we charge people, I think, is a really interesting one for our services. I was involved in something back in the early 90s when we were training the unemployed in HTML, web design skills. Yeah, and we had this problem where people would sign up for every single course and then either not turn up for any of them or turn up for one or two. Right? So we charged them £5 for as many as they liked, and then they would turn up. And I think Gurdjieff talks about psychological investment. You go to the guy at the end of the road and say, what's the meaning of life? And he says, the cherry tree in the garden. It makes no sense. That's just BS. But you fly to India, you have to travel to Pune, you have to bathe yourself every day for 2 weeks. And then the guru says the cherry tree in the garden, that lands.
Yes. How does one charge, and why does one charge for the services that we might be offering along these lines? Because when you charge, the message, people show up and the message seems to get through. And when you don't charge, they take it way too lightly.
Exactly that. There's a tendency for people to perceive free things as being exactly worth that. So it isn't about making money. It's about just enough so that people have skin in the game and really want to be there and join in. I'm not saying this is true for every single situation. There are certain situations where giving things for free is absolutely the right way to do it. But we need to ask ourselves, what is happening if we do psychologically charge, and if we don't charge psychologically.
Right. So certain situations it is appropriate to give things away for free, to information, whatever it is. But in other situations, having an amount that is to trigger the response the person who's receiving, rather than it's not about making money necessarily for the giver. It's more about the value that is then ascribed to it by the receiver.
Yeah, exactly. So some years ago when I was validating my techniques, and the other thing is, I started talking about contentious words. I started my workshops because they come from the world of stage mind reading, right? So I started them as mind reading workshops, and it was working with the NHS, where they said, "Can we call these empathy workshops? We think that's actually closer to what you're doing." So I think I've moved from a more contentious and worse word. But I did that for a year. I was trying to validate my techniques, so I offered to do them for expenses. Except for organizations who I felt had money, I would say to them, give me some money and I'll use that money to be able to do free workshops for organizations who can't afford it. Right? Some organizations understood that and it worked well. Others were completely baffled by the idea and they would just say, please just tell us how much money you want. Don't confuse us with this weird business model.
Okay. Okay, that was quite a bunch of little complex financial ideas in there, but and I think I missed the word mind greasing, mind wetting,
mind reading.
Mind reading. Oh, I see. Mind reading.
Although I do want to become a mind greaser, and that might be my whole new branding.
Okay. So so sometimes different words hit people in different ways, and certainly different financial arrangements can be appropriate or inappropriate at different times.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I'll go on to Jana then.
Sure.
Okay. And I still don't have much in the way of any idea how to build the movement any bigger. I just have no idea. I mean, I think California is the sort of place where most of the world's great ideas get commodified and sold to the rest of the world, and so perhaps it's appropriate that that's sort of the source of all these organizations, and maybe empathy, the empathy circles, the empathy movement is along the lines of EST or one of those other famous California products.
So you really still don't have any idea how to expand the empathy movement to 8 billion people, and you're thinking that some great ideas come from California and get commodified like EST, and maybe empathy circles is like that.
Yeah, I mean it occurs to me that does seem to be one of California's main products, and empathy circles is a great product, if I can say that for a moment, that I've certainly used, in quite a few situations. I'll be in a mediation, and I'll just kind of slip it into, empathy circle mode, and just say, well, let's try a little exercise here. We'll give you 3 minutes each, and you reply, and I just kind of introduce it like that, real casual, and it's actually turned out it is actually very, very effective, I must say, I've been definitely a fan of Edwin and his work and the work at the Empathy Center for quite some time.
So you're saying that the empathy circle, you're referring to it as a product, and you found it quite useful in mediation. And sometimes when things aren't necessarily going so well, you'll sneak it in. You'll just slip it in, like, okay, now 3 minutes you, 3 minutes you, like that. And it really helps a lot. And you're a great fan of empathy circles and of Edwin's work.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's true. So how to make it bigger? This is where what's happening right here? I mean, these are obviously the steps that have come, and I'm sure that the Empathy Center mailing list is an awful lot bigger than it used to be. And I must say, coming on here and finding people from all over the world that show up for these little Zooms is very encouraging. A sign that it's there, and now maybe this is its moment.
And you're appreciating this summit as a significant contribution, perhaps, or a step towards building the empathy movement. And people coming from all over the world is really heartwarming and encouraging. And yeah, maybe we're on the right track.
Thank you. Yeah. I think my earphones are telling me they're giving up the ghost here after 3.5 hours or 3 hours. So I'm going to just find some new earphones, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's really a joy. Thank you. Edwin, you want to listen to
Listening?
Well, I don't know if Martin's listening anymore. So there's a story that I like to share. I'll share it for Susan also. I explained that I have some difficulty. So with these most difficult people that I'm litigating with.
Oh, you're just going to share that there's some people you have difficulty and you're litigating with, and
Yeah, and after I'd been doing empathy circles for like 8 months, I requested a meeting to solve some problem with them. And after I spoke for a while, explaining, who I was and our situation, I recognized that I didn't want the director to just launch into her counterattack, her attack, and I wanted to be heard.
So you took part in the empathy circles for 8 months or so, and then you were in this group with the lawyers or litigators, and you shared, and you realized you didn't want to be attacked by the other side.
Yeah, I was the director and an assistant of an organization, and there's the other party to the litigation, not the lawyers themselves. And so I said, would you be willing to reflect what I just said?
So you asked them to reflect what you were saying.
And she did a little bit. And then at the end of the 45-minute meeting, when she became so aggressive and attacking and just saying, I want you to agree to, I want you to agree to, I want you to agree, it was the repetition that caught my attention, that she wasn't being heard. And so I didn't tell her why I could never agree to that, or what was wrong with it, or why it was a stupid idea. I just said, would you like me to reflect what you just said?
So in the discussion, she was saying, I just want you to agree to this. She's just repeating herself about wanting to agree to it, and you're realizing that's probably a signal that she didn't feel heard. And in that case, you offered to reflect back your understanding of what she was saying.
So I just reflected her words exactly. You want me to agree to XYZ? That was it. I never agreed to it, and I got my 2 requests from the meeting, and that was the end. So even though that, this is not a stated goal of the empathy circle, but this is how I was able to apply it when, I don't know what to say, when the rubber hit the road or whatever you want to say, however you describe that.
Yeah, so this is actually how from practical, what you learned in the empathy circles, you applied it in that situation, and you had just reflected back, or you'd reflected back what she said, and it seemed to satisfy her just to be heard, even though you didn't agree to make the agreement.
Yeah. Thanks. I feel heard. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Susan, can I speak to you?
Please, I'm interested.
Yeah. Yeah, so to build the empathy movement, there's a couple things. One, I think, is having a training curriculum is one thing that would help. I'm really excited that you're wanting to be involved because you have so much experience, and it's really not my, expertise. And so I'm glad to have people who are really knowledgeable about training involved.
Yeah, so maybe my experience could help us together along the way.
And the other idea that I have is what I call occupy empathy for better terms right now, is to actually, like Occupy Wall Street. I think that we can take our empathy tent out and occupy a space, by a government building, demanding that we need a culture of empathy, that the left and right need to bridge their divides, and we're here to sort of model how to do that. But we're but it's out in public and sort of gets the publicity like Occupy did.
Wow, occupy empathy, where people really get a chance to experience how this can work with polarized people. It's exciting.
And so I actually checked out a No Kings rally in Sacramento. I was sort of checking out the rally because I've been there multiple times, with the empathy tent to different events. But I'm thinking that would be a good place to start. Set up. We're actually camping out and probably get arrested and so forth. So we need people who are willing to get arrested. And we say that we want Republican and Democrat legislatures at the state capitol to have empathy circles, and we're not leaving until they do. So.
You're a sit-in about getting people who are polarized to participate in empathy circles and to bridge the divide and even risk getting arrested.
Yeah. And that's really where we've gotten the most media is with the empathy tent out in public. I mean, we were on Fox and Friends, and Breitbart wrote about it. The newspapers, LA Times, Sacramento Bee, TV shows. In fact, when Bill was talking about being at the Democratic convention, we got on TV there, interviewed, and so it's really being out in public, being activist, nonviolent demonstrations that gets the attention. I think that's what kind of we need.
Hearing is that you've gotten media attention for the empathy tent for being out in political situations. And this feels like another point on how to grow the movement.
I feel very heard. Thank you, Susan.
Let's see. Marjana. Are you available to listen?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Well, I am finding myself excited by this conversation, and I have more ideas for this 1 hour meeting, and that's enough for now.
So you're excited about this conversation and you're getting more ideas for the 1 hour package.
Yes, and I'm also thinking, oh, for this topic, I would have this page from a training, or I would have this exercise, and I would so love to share how we expand this so people have the everyday skills and the understanding of not taking over, which is a big deal.
So things are coming to mind, like what exercise you'd like to share and what page you'd like to share, and what to share so that people don't take over.
Yes, so many people are focused on what they know. And unless they can quiet their self-talk, which is very difficult.
So people are really focused on what they know, and it's really hard for them to quiet their own self-talk and wanting to be, what they're going to say next.
Oh, yeah, Jenna, aren't we all wanting attention? Aren't we all wanting to be smart? And how we need to cut through that to really notice how much we care about other people and open our hearts.
So everyone wants to be smart, and we need to really open our hearts, and we really need to show how much we care about other people.
Yeah, and I think there are several turning points in how we have people realize the cultural pattern and our own particular needs that get in the way of compassion, empathy, deep interest in somebody else.
And so we need to have deep interest in others and to get past our own cultural viewpoints and our own I don't know what else, biases or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel really heard and understood. I think we need to help people get out of their own way in order to be empathic, and we can do that.
And you're saying that we need to help each other and ourselves get out of our own way so that we can become empathic.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really feel your caring and your interest and your listening.
And you're appreciating my listening and my caring, I guess, something like that.
It means so much to me, especially when I was so enthusiastic and I just saw you light up. That was an amazing reflection.
And you appreciated my reflecting somehow your enthusiasm.
Yeah, you don't need words for that. I think we do a lot with our grunts and our facial expression and our matching their feelings and our, yep.
And you think we do a lot with our body and our facial expressions and our grunts and the way that we reflect each other. And it's not something that we teach here. Yeah. I still have 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Stuart, you want to listen to me? You're muted. Maybe Jillian hasn't gone in a while. I don't know who hasn't gone in a while. You're muted, Stuart.
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, I can grunt.
You can grunt. No, I can hear. In terms of bias, I like to share Mathieu Ricard's talk, How to Let Altruism Be Your Guide.
Right. So there's, in terms of bias, there's a talk. I didn't catch the name. That's about understanding that.
Yeah, how to let altruism be your guide. Mathieu Ricard is a French name, Matthhieu, I guess. Ricard, Ricard. You don't have to repeat that. There's a 5 minute or so segment, 4 minutes with a sticker test.
Okay. Matthew Kai, I think I'm hearing. But there's a sticker test in this that's important. Matthew Kai.
Yeah, so they went into a classroom of 5-year-olds and they had the kids distribute stickers to their favorite to the kids in the class, and they then counted how many stickers who got what after mapping the relationships of the kids to each other.
Right. So this was a game experiment where kids had to give stickers to the people they liked the most.
Well, no, they had to give it to the kids in the class, and or to different people. They had to give it to their best friend and to, I don't know how they actually set up the experiment exactly, but they gave the stickers to their other classmates, and then they measured it at the beginning of the experiment, before and after.
Okay, so they gave stickers to their classmates, and then they measured what it was like before the stickers were given out and after the stickers were given out.
And after the intervention. The intervention was a few weeks of like 5 minutes a day or something of mindfulness, of meditation, mindfulness training.
Okay, so they took different groups and had them give out stickers, but some groups had mindfulness intervention.
So the kids at the beginning, before they learned mindfulness, they were giving most of the stickers, like 70%, to their best friend, and then the child who was sick, and the child they didn't like, and the neutral child weren't getting very many stickers for each child, and they knew who that was for each child in the classroom.
Right. So before any mindfulness intervention, the behaviors of sticker giving tended to be to people they liked. And there were certain kids who weren't getting as many as others.
Right, and at the end of the few weeks of mindfulness training, the kids then distributed stickers, and it was all equal. They no longer were biased. Everybody was getting the sick child, the neutral child, the child they didn't like, and their best friend were getting equal stickers.
Right. Yes. So after the mindfulness intervention, sticker giving behaviors became about parity and evenness and equality, and everybody got the same.
Yeah, thanks. So I think for the empathy movement that whatever works.
Yes. So for the empathy movement, whatever works is going to be key.
Yeah, thanks. I feel
That's fantastic. I'm looking up the experiment later. Um, is it time for me to go? I don't know how much
Yes, it's
time
up to you. We have time for one more. So if you want, Jillian hasn't gone for a while.
Um,
If you want to speak to her.
yes, that would be great. Gillian,
Yes.
are you up for it?
Yes, absolutely.
We're not tired. We're not tired.
No, we're not. One more.
This whatever works thing is that it actually chimes with what's been on my mind through this, because we're talking about different strategies. Should we use the word empathy or should we avoid the word empathy? Should we seek out people like ourselves and work with them, or should we seek out people who are very, very different and try to work with them?
Yes. So that's something that's been on your mind of what will work, and something that kind of feels overarching of what we've been talking about a lot in terms of, do we call it empathy or not, or who do we interact with or incentivize, things like that.
Yeah. And of course, one thing I'm really learning here is that it's about listening to other people. It's about understanding their perspective. And if we're going to do that with ourselves and to ourselves amongst this group, then it's going to be a disparate group with lots of different strategies and different ways of attacking the problem.
Because we prioritize listening so much with this empathy movement and empathy circle, naturally there's going to be a lot of different perspectives and input coming in.
Yeah. And I think that's a strength. That gives us different ways of attacking things. We have people saying that, like Susan saying, I don't mention empathy up front, but once I'm in there, this is like a guerrilla movement. It's like a get behind the enemy lines, and then I'll start mentioning it, and then I'll start talking about it. Or different ways. And then other people really focused on, no, we need to change the public understanding of the word empathy itself. And these aren't incompatible approaches. These are just two different modes of help.
Sure. So when thinking about how to strengthen the empathy movement or push it forward, what strategies we use to appeal to the masses of people who are looking for different things when it comes to training empathy, there's naturally going to be a lot of different strategies that we have in this circle, because we do want to prioritize listening to other strategies and making them feel heard.
Mm-hmm. So I have a business advisor, and one thing he did was he said, if I want to branch out into working with SMEs more, because I tend to work with quite large organizations, he said talk to lots and lots of SMEs, listen to them, find out what their problems are, and then ask yourself genuinely, can your empathy training help with any of those? So I ended up with a list of the 10 things really facing SMEs in the UK right now, and I've been trying to focus my training around those things.
So your business advisor kind of oriented you toward like a user prioritized model when it comes to your strategy with all of this, where you focus on their needs first as opposed to what you're trying to do.
Exactly, which of course is ironic, because that's what empathy is all about, and I should have
yeah, right. Hey, lots of diverse perspectives. That's what we like, and that's our strength.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to be closing the rooms. I got to go back to the main room to debrief. So we have one. Let me see here. I'm going to hit the close all rooms. So we have 1 minute. So just want to thank everyone in the circle, for taking part. Which looks like she already left. Yeah. So it'll move us automatically over there, or you can go leave breakout room.
Whoop.
So the other group is waiting to the very last minute until they're.
Did anyone visit you, Cara, in the main room?
I had Faylee jumped out of her circle and I got to put her right back on in. I think I put her back in the room that she was in, I think. But otherwise, no, I had a nice and lovely break, and I'm so excited to hear what all of everybody talked about.
Well, welcome back, everyone. After we've done our circles, it's traditional to do a little debrief. And what I'm going to be doing is a little debrief by calling on everyone to share their experiences, share your ideas and projects for building an empathy movement. And so what I'm going to do is start out with Susan. Would you share?
Yes, and not exactly following the directions. I am concerned about what I see has happened with empathy circles in the several years I haven't been involved. I'm more concerned that we are tuning to people with our hearts open and not repeating what they said, which makes us feel quite heady, or trying to pay attention to the words rather than the essential experience behind that. One more thing. I have a pretty good idea of a 1 hour speech and some materials to offer for people who want to be in training. Thank you so much.
You could share any links in the chat if you'd like. Thank you. Martin, would you tell us about your experience?
Oh, okay. It's been a while since I've done a formal empathy circle in this format, and it was quite nice to come back and have that experience. And I mentioned that I'm a great believer in the technology, and I've used it many times in mediations in some form or other, and as opposed to the very slightly rigid format that we do here. But no, it was nice to be back, nice to experience it, and bravo to the Empathy Center and just keeping it all going. But I don't have much in the way of ideas of a way forward, I'm afraid.
Well, thank you very much, Martin, and thank you. And Julian, could you share with us?
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. We were focusing on the empathy movement, how to strengthen it, and specifically strategies for strengthening it. So we talked about things like, do we call it empathy or not? Is that a negatively triggering word for people now to call it empathy? Or do we kind of like hide it behind something else, like listening workshops, and then, bring out the empathy once we've hooked them in? Or like, what do people want when it comes to empathy? What are they looking for? Are they looking for someone to listen to them or to show them attention, or things like that? So we were really thinking about strategies that were, other people focused when it came to thinking about how we could strengthen or spread the movement.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much for your contribution today and your thoughts. Stuart, would you share with us a little closing remark?
Yes, I've learned a lot. I think there's the thing I do struggle with a lot is that I am a chatterbox. And it's hard to draw the line between thinking about what you want to say next and genuinely listening to what people say and reflecting on it, and that being part of what you say next. Those things to me are entangled. So there's always a difficult process there. I think a lot of the work, though, is done through laughter and smiles, and grunts were mentioned, and I love being so much about the physical side of empathy. I think a grunt workshop would be fantastic.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. Uh, um, Melseers, I hope I got that pronouncing. Would
Yes.
you share with us?
Oh, sure. We had it was an enjoyable group. I always enjoy empathy circles. I mean, I don't you want to use the word always, but I don't know of one that I haven't enjoyed. So, um, and we talked about the role of honesty in empathy circles and how important it is when you're engaging with others that it's not just a one-way street, just a empathy street, that there's also honesty. Like in the old days, a therapist's role was to be invisible, but now we're learning to show up and to bring ourselves in to any kind of relationship. So we talked about that honesty isn't just about being intellectually honest, like judging other people or saying, I think that you're a jerk. That's being honest on one level, but we talked about being honest on a self-revealing level of our feelings, expressing our feelings and needs instead of our judgments. Anyway, yeah, I think we were all on the same page in my group and enjoyed everybody's feedback.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Dana, would you share with us a little closing remarks?
Did you mean Diana, or is there a
Oh,
Dana?
Diana, I'm sorry.
Okay, I just want to make sure it was me. I'm with Susan, a little worried about trying to capture everything that someone just said, including sort of the procedural things they expressed, and wanting a little more heart in it. But I also appreciated the opportunity to practice on such a micro level, sentence by sentence. So it was an interesting experience, and I'm curious about learning more and wanting to be part of helping expand our reach to get more people engaged as I develop my own empathy practice as well.
Well, thank you very much. And I want to point out we have a calendar, which I think I can ask someone to put in the chat, and that are publishing openly empathy circles that anyone can attend. You just look at the calendar and then drop in. Thank you. Martin, would you share with us?
Yes, I think I see this both, I think, externally and externally. I recognized needing my own ability to reflect back to people what they needed, but I also see the external need for having empathy circles.
Well, thank you for sharing. Tarja, would you like to share with us?
Yes, I enjoyed the empathy circle today. I found after practicing these listening and reflective listening techniques and then speaking in empathy circles for I don't know if it's been 6 months, but something like that, that it builds my ability to tune in with other people, and that it becomes that my practice of even in an empathy circle gets better every time that I'm in one, because I learn about how to speak to another person, and then I can use that on the outside. And then I also learn how to listen too. It's an interesting thing. It was really helpful for me to have the different people who shared differently and listen differently in this particular circle and see how it all came together nonetheless. So great.
Well, thank you. And Christina, would you like to share with us? Okay, we'll come back to Christina.
Oh, no, I got it.
Muted.
I just had to find it on my phone. This was really nice. It was my first one. And it's got me percolating on some thoughts where I had story around maybe my memory or being able to say things back. and whether that needed to be verbatim or just like my feeling and reflecting. But I realized maybe it's not just my memory. Maybe it's like I'm just so engaged, I'm not filing it in a certain way. And I'm now curious, okay, well, how can I hone that skill? So this is great, and I'll come back to more. Thank you all.
Well, thank you. Nita, would you have some closing thoughts for us?
Yes, this was a very good experience for me today. Um, I've been on, I don't know how many empathy circles now, and I just love being on empathy circles. I love the naturalness that uh, was happening within myself and others that I speak with and listen to. And it's just very precious to me. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Did I get Stuart Nolan? Stuart, did you get a chance to do a closing remark? Okay. And then Edwin, do we have time? Should we
Yeah, I
go
think we
on?
should get everyone, all the
Okay. Well,
facilitators.
Cara, what do you have to share with us?
I didn't get to participate this time, but I love the variations I'm hearing in how we hear each other and how we reflect each other, because I think that is my favorite part of this practice, is that it's always diverse and I always learn something. Check.
Well, thank you. And I love your smile, Cara. Jana, would you share with us?
Yeah, I really love the empathy circle. I love empathy circles. Um, it works. I think it works. When you do a lot of them, it works. Yeah, and I've been doing them for 4.5 years now, and I really appreciate empathy circles. And as for growing it to 8 billion people, I think it's one person at a time. So I think that's how it works. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. Edwin, some closing remarks from you?
Maybe I'll go at the very end when I do the debrief.
Okay.
Next time, maybe Bill or so.
Bill?
Yeah, well, it was great to see Mel again. And so it's really nice when I don't see people for a while, and then we're in a circle and stuff. It feels like meeting a friend again. Um, and I just want to say something about the empathy circle is not about perfection, and it's not about the best reflection, and it's not about if you need to, parrot. Just start where you are, and you'll get better if you practice it. I'm not disputing the fact that we, certainly would want an open heart, and you want to try to, listen into what people are saying. But not all people can do that. What about kindergartners? What about people who have, language problems? What about people who don't speak English as a first language? And so, therefore, those people, they're included too, and they're welcome into. And whatever level that they can start at, they're welcome to start, and then basically join us all on our empathic path. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Ingrid?
Yeah, I especially liked to get to know Martin and Diana. That's always a great bonus of coming to events, that I get to know new people. And like Cara said, it just also creates the opportunity to experience differences, that we are all different. And I like that we leave room for that we allow everyone to be there. And the structure of the empathy circle holds that together, that there can be differences. And I like the simplicity of the circle and the openness and the accessibility.
Well, thank you. And Daniel, have a closing statement for us?
Oh, sorry, I was still invisible. I was listening. I want to second what Ingrid said, that rather than, I want to say this sort of like this is an experience, it's a trajectory that we share with each other that is growing in the direction of bringing us closer together and make this practice deeper, our listening abilities, our receiving abilities deeper. But it's, again, like Bill pointed out and Ingrid pointed out, and I heard from several people, I think the value of taking this lightly and being on each other's side, sort of like say, we do this as a team, and not to point out what's missing, but more to point out where we can make it better. That's what I felt in this culture here right now, and I appreciate that.
Well, thank you very much. I hope I got everyone. But before I turn it back over to Edwin, I'm going to remind everyone that you have to save your chat if you want to keep the links. And so it's so important that you do that before you exit. And if you saved it an hour ago, you're going to miss 1 hour's worth of links if you don't save it again. And I just want to thank everyone for being here today. And I'm going to just wish everyone well and turn it over to Edwin.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan. So in terms of movement building, there were two things that I talked about. One was the curriculum, that we build the curriculum. And I agree with what Susan is saying, that when we do the reflection, it's good to just share the essence in your own words of what the other person says. But that's actually part of the curriculum, I think, is a segment on how to do the speaking and the active listening, and I think we can do more to kind of clarify that. And the other how to build the movement was I talked about the calling occupy empathy, is that we take the empathy tent out to a public place like the California State Capitol, and we occupy it like Occupy Wall Street did. And we say we're not leaving until the Republicans and Democrats have empathy circles with each other. And we hold ongoing empathy circles and do our training curriculum kind of in that space. So I'm sort of setting the groundwork for that action. In terms of closing, you can see we posted into the chat kind of a bunch of different links. One is our next summit is on June 6th, and that's going to be about the empathy circle. So we invite you to be a speaker, on some aspect of the empathy circle, some insight. If you want to talk about how to do good listening, how good speaking and listening, that would be a good topic to speak about. July 11th and October 3rd are, again, on this movement building. And you can fill out the feedback form. There's a link there. You can give us some feedback on how this was, and we can get it in writing. And there's a link to be a summit volunteer. So we have a great team, Cara, Jana, and Jonathan. We've hosted, I don't know how many of these summits. We got a bunch more that we're planning, and we'd love to have more people involved in it. It's a lot of fun and really creates it's a good way to build community, is work together on a project like this. Yeah, you can see the empathycenter.org is our main website, and it has links to all the other ones, our other projects. We've got the facilitation training that Bill leads. That's April 8th is the beginning of the next one. That's
18th.
18th, is it? Oh, okay. Caught that. 18th.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, 18th, right. It's 2 weeks after this one. And I think after that, the week after that training, we're going to do another empathy marathon. We did one empathy circle marathon. We did an 8-hour empathy marathon a couple weeks ago, and would love to have you take part. So if you really want to get into the energy, I mean, afterwards, I felt very like in an empathic state, just really kind of open and grounded. So, and it's sort of experimental to, try that out, bit of a research project too. And you can see there's a link there, number 7, the schedule of upcoming empathy circles. You can join anyone to drop in. again, is to save your chat. You click on the 3 buttons on the chat, and that'll get you all the links. And again, we ask you to donate. We're all volunteering to do this, but as an organization, it helps to have income coming in. And let's see, finally, I think we can close out. We'd like to do our applause hands, just to have a group photograph. Everybody, if you can turn your video on, we can just, it always makes a nice photograph for the social media. And so we will see you next time. Thanks again for joining us. So bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
You're amazing. Thank you, everyone. This is incredible.
Excellent.
Thanks, everybody.
Excellent.
Yes, good to see you again, Martin.
Nice to see you too, Edwin.
Edwin,